Dreams. It's something that most of all of us can relate to. That weird time in your slumber where you find yourself in strange and sometimes straight up bizarre circumstances. Where one may be chased by grimace and fear, or maybe even have a chat with Beth Bezos and get $1 bajillion. A time that asks more questions than it provides answers, but nonetheless, a time that makes one look back and think, wow, that sure was something. Hey guys, it's me, Stuffy Cat, an average dude who's fascinated by dreams. Yep, I've always been awestruck by what dreams have to offer, from supposedly dumb and completely random dreams that have as much meaning as a pine cone, to dreams that feel like the deepest piece of literature ever composed. Variety is one of the best things that dreams have to offer. And I think that's why I like them so much, or at least just one of the many reasons why I like having dreams so much. I'll never know where my mind will take me in a night, and that mystery is such a fun part about dreaming. The other part I like about dreams is how bizarre and weird they can get. Now, don't get me wrong, there 100% is too weird, but when a dream can hit that sweet spot for captivating uncanny valley, it's a moment to behold. Oh yeah, and that reminds me, I should probably get to the, explaining the iceberg suit, shouldn't I? Well, my personal dreams iceberg works almost just like any other iceberg out there, with a bunch of entries organized into a distinct amount of layers. However, what's different about this iceberg is the way the entries were ordered. Similarly to Midnight Krick's personal dreams and nightmares iceberg, the dreams in this iceberg are mine, so I can't really order them off of obscurity like in traditional icebergs. So instead, also similarly to Midnight Krick, the layers in the iceberg are structured around the tone of the dream. The deeper the dream, the darker the tone will likely be. Also, this video was inspired by and mainly structured like Midnight Krick's iceberg I mentioned earlier, like 2 seconds earlier. I would suggest the video to you all, but as my audience is quite wide in maturity, at least I think so, I don't really know who I should recommend it to. The video gets progressively more sweary and dark, but the latter was to be expected. I love the video, but just watch it with caution. On that note, I'd also like to mention the disclaimers I have for this video as well. As you may know, I don't typically have disclaimers for, any of my videos, but this video is different. As I said, this iceberg contains my actual dreams, and as described by Krick,
dreams have no filter.
This means that throughout the iceberg, the dreams will get darker and into deeper, more uncomfy topics. At least for me, so yeah. But don't worry guys, it's not too bad. At least until layers 4 and 5. And a little bit of 3. Yeah. In the end though, the disturbingness of topics is pretty subjective to anyone who observes, so who knows. All that being said, I'll be putting any type of disclaimer I feel is necessary at the beginning of each layer, just to be safe. Oh, and one last thing. I don't have much visual stuff to show for the descriptions of my dreams, as they're my dreams and we don't have a dream recorder because, I don't know, we just keep on making new cars. So I'll be putting some sort of gaming footage for the background of each respective layer, as well as any images I can scrounge up for the descriptions of the dreams. Anyways, with all of that being said, finally, let's get into the iceberg. I'm excited for this. Let's go. Layer 1 is best described as an interesting layer with a lot of nice, fluffy, comforting, and just random snippets of little stories. You'll find things that somewhat make sense, but most of the things will be tiny little fragments of a good time. This is Layer 1. Celebration of the Rose. To begin the dream, one day I was given a random package from no one in particular. The package I received was a shiny and glittery rose wrapped in plastic saran wrap packaging. Because I got this package, I was seemingly supposed to report to a certain church with my family for a sort of ceremony or celebration. Once I got to the church, I entered it slowly with my family and realized that the church only consisted of a small sanctuary, as my mother explained to me that the reason I was there was that I received the rose. Even after the explanation, though, I was still pretty confused. After a crappy transition, I was talking to my Spanish teacher, and she and I had a sort of Spanish translation conversation with each other. I don't remember much of what was said, but I do recall that I was vaguely translating a story about someone lost or hiding in space. While I attempted to translate this story, I saw my youth pastor, the one who looks like Jesus, walking up behind my Spanish teacher. He stared at me patiently, waiting for me to finish my conversation with my Spanish teacher. He didn't even seem to be rushing me or anything. He just seemed like he was patiently waiting to speak with me. I translated most of the sentences given to me by my Spanish teacher, but I eventually got caught up on one specific word that I couldn't understand. I explained my struggle to my teacher, and before anything else could have happened, I woke up. Bullying Jellybean. In this stream, I was watching the POV of some Minecraft YouTuber playing a strange minigame with the YouTuber Jellybean. Jellybean tried to do some parkour race thing in the dream, and the player I saw from the perspective was trying to sabotage or bully Jellybean in the race. The player I watched used items like bows and arrows to sabotage Jellybean while he tried to proceed in the competition. At one point in the race, Jellybean and two other players competing decided to stop in front of the player whose perspective I was watching from. Jellybean spammed the good old peace sign of Minecraft, as the player whose perspective I'm watching from seemed to get quite annoyed at Jellybean's distraction. One of the other players next to Jellybean then pulled out the Fortnite default dance, ending the dream. In style, I must say. MatPat Mario Maker 3. In this stream, I was playing a black and white Mario Maker, perceived to be Mario Maker 3. The level of Mario Maker 3 that I was playing, in fact, was Game Theory MatPat's level, solidified by the commentary in the background of MatPat's likes and dislikes of the new Mario Maker game, while I had on in the background while I played. In the commentary, MatPat explained that the first person who finds the secret exit to his level would be featured in some thumbnail that would reach 7,000 people. I continued to finish the level through the secret exit, even though it was common knowledge to me that I definitely would not be the first one to defeat the level's challenges. As I got near to the end of the level, MatPat started to talk about the Wii features of the Mario Maker 3 game, and after I completed the level, I saw something very speculative. As Mario was exiting the level once I had reached the secret exit, for a split second, I saw his sprite changing from one game style to another. Pirate Imprisonment. In this stream, I took the role of Johnny Depp, more specifically his character, Jack Sparrow from the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I was at the bottom deck of a pirate ship, seemingly there against my will, hiding. I wandered around the two rooms that I could walk in, one room being larger than the other that contained a wide staircase that led to the deck of the ship. The smaller room had a huge window and a panel on the wall somewhere. When I walked over to the doorway and staircase that led to the deck of the ship, I heard an abundance of almost a chant-like large group of pirates singing, only vocals. In the dream, I knew I was basically trapped on the lower deck of the ship, hiding from the pirates on the top deck. I went into the smaller room to inspect the window, but soon realized that I would not be escaping through there. The window presented a lot of water, way too much for me to be able to swim to the surface of it without drowning. Maybe the pirate ship was just a lot bigger than I thought, or maybe it was a deceptive submarine. Either way, the window escaping method was off the table. I looked around the room more, noticing the panel again. The panel contained oddly colored and numbered popsicle sticks on the outside of it. I eventually connected the dots and used my keychain full of popsicle sticks I had with me to touch specifically colored popsicle sticks to their similarly colored variants on the panel. I only remember one popsicle stick specifically that I used in this stream, that being a red outline 25 popsicle stick. After I completed this popsicle sticks puzzle, a small white child appeared on the right of me, clothed in some sort of white robe, resembling some sort of fairy. He looked at me with his shiny eyes and said with gratitude, "Finally, you figured it out!" Italian talk. I was somewhere in my high school during this dream, sitting at a table with a couple of my friends, specifically the first chair flute and a person who I was close with in middle school. We were doing some project about something Italian, which caused us to begin talking about Italian accents. Both of my peers agreed that I should make my version of Mario's voice sound more Italian. Very random, I know. Ouch! All I really remember about this dream was a specific part of the dream where I stood in front of our downstairs bathroom mirror. For some reason, as I intently watched the mirror, I noticed that my right eye was fully closed, seemingly against my own will. Now, I have this thing with my eyes that I like to call, if I close one of my eyes, the other one gets kinda scrunched up disorder. The thing is that this was not the case in the dream. My left eye was fully open with my right eye fully shut. I remember putting one of my hands up to my right eye to see if it was still there, and I saw that nothing was wrong with it. It just wouldn't open up. Weird. Also, a few days after this dream happened, while making some eggs, I made this little mistake that instantly reminded me of this dream. Wait, I want to go back! This was kind of a more experience that I remember having when I was little than a dream, but it's a dream Iceberg, so yeah. In the dream, I was playing a new Super Mario Bros.-like game, my entire perspective taken up by the visuals of the game. In the game, I was controlling a little avatar of Mario that I could move to different blue and red circles around the map, the circles distinguishing the levels I had completed or had yet to complete. The thing is, unlike in most new Super Mario Bros. Maps, where Mario was in the dream, was oddly empty. The map I traversed was space-themed. There were stars and galaxies in the background, but the levels were extremely spaced out. I probably had to wait at least 30 seconds before I made it to the next level, the levels only being connected by an invisible line that Mario would walk on from one stage to the next. I was just about to begin a level in the dream, but suddenly I woke up. After I woke up, I immediately remembered the dream and what I was about to do in the dream, which caused me to frantically try to go back to sleep in hopes that I would somehow re-enter the game dream. Looking back on it now, it was odd how much I wanted to go back to the dream, but I guess it was understandable. Mr. Beast's Donut Party. The beginning of this dream took place in a large stadium where my little sister, my dad, and I all sat. My dad and sister sat directly in front of me as they anticipated Mr. Beast's return. The stadium was packed with little kids and their families, all seemingly waiting for Mr. Beast to return in order to hear the rules to a challenge or something. After a bit of waiting, Mr. Beast entered the stage and excitedly announced the challenge we were participating in. Once Mr. Beast walked onto the stage, I remember hearing my sister becoming very excited, while she said things like, "He's finally here, yay!" My dad and little sister watched Mr. Beast intently for his instructions as Mr. Beast seemed to be presenting himself for pictures while my perspective zoomed in on the rich man standing in front of a table with piles of money on top. Mr. Beast grabbed an armful of cash and then we were suddenly now at a different area, a table, all together, although the dream never implied that I was still with my little sister and dad. There was a box of donuts in the middle of the table, calling me to grab and eat one. I grabbed a regular and normal donut, but decided not to eat it right away, likely because after I selected my donut, I realized that there were much more interesting Mr. Beast-colored sprinkled donuts that I could have selected. I stared intently at the selection I could have taken, really wanting to switch my boring donut with a much more fun one, but I already seemed to understand I wasn't going to switch my donut. Jakerton in Fragility. In this stream, I was either watching a Jakerton video over a live stream, or just a live stream on some sort of streaming platform, as my vision presented a screen similar to a Discord call, but with many viewers trying to say something all at the same time. The call is absolute chaos, and all I could hear other than a sort of static was Jakerton's voice over all of the madness. Seemingly responding to chat, I remember hearing Jakerton say, 39, it's loud enough. While all of this is happening, I also remember having a word constantly being repeated in my mind throughout the dream, this word being fragility. This may be in reference to the fragility of my ears after hearing the loud video. But hey, that's just a theory, a dream theory. The curtain of comfy. All I remember happening in this dream is me being in the dining room, preparing to open the curtains. I came across the big window in the room, but instead of being covered by the normal curtains, it was covered by the comfy blanket that I got from Christmas 2021. The blanket was the curtain, somehow. It holding the same properties as a curtain, it even being held up by a curtain rack. Strange. Lucid Tricycle Gang. Starting this dream, I was in my house, specifically the kitchen, looking at my mom, who was sad for some reason. I didn't seem to care that my mom was sad, possibly because I knew that I was in a dream, so I decided to head for the door in order to exit the house. In the background, my mom explained how she was sad because of something my dad did, but I didn't stick around to figure out whatever it was. I headed out the door and entered the fresh, nice, and grassy outdoors, even though during the time of the dream, it was nowhere near nice and non-snowy. At this point, I gained full lucidity and decided to start exploring my nice dream environment. I looked around the play equipment, trying to select the perfect vehicle to help me explore, pondering if I should use the little play tractor as my vehicle of choice. In the end, I decided not to use a vehicle at all, and instead just walking to my lucid adventuring route. Don't worry, that's an entry later on. What you need to know now is that I decided to walk down a regular route of mine, down a road beside my house. The thing is though, I couldn't progress forward down my regular route because a group of menacing tricycle riders blocked my path. Well, I guess they weren't necessarily blocking my path, but I could see them riding toward me from a distance, and I took that as a sign of hostility, deciding to take a right turn and escape the tricycle gang. Suddenly, I was in a new, open park-like area, with grass covering a big chunk of empty land. The place where I was seemingly only existed in my dream as a separate area for me to be sent to after I turned right, my mind apparently not being able to come up what was to the right of the main route I usually take. I was on the back of some older kid's tricycle, the kid explaining to me while we were doing some sick tricks on a brick side laying of a sidewalk how he liked to jump certain places and objects with his tricycle to look cool. The brick-sided sidewalk we did tricks on was oddly reminiscent of the sidewalk that, at the time of the dream, had just been finished solely by my father in the real world. Everything else in the dream was sort of just a blur. Interestingly enough, a video that I watched later that day after I had the dream had a YouTuber talking about tricycles for a decent amount of time. That YouTuber being Jakerton and his I Laugh, I Eat a Chicken video or something like that, which I thought was strange. It's showtime! In this dream, I was sitting in my spot in the gym risers for the pep band gig we had the day prior, during the December 2022 school assembly. I was sitting patiently at my seat on the risers, and I spotted the main girl drum major in front of my band teacher, the same seat height that I was on, but standing on the riser instead of sitting. My band teacher looked at her like she just asked him an interesting question, and he then turned to the rest of the band. My band teacher then asked the band members present for a show of hands of who would be interested in playing Undertale music. For context, I guess, it's been a necessity and ongoing plan for me to push the concept of playing Undertale music in the band all throughout high school. Either in concert, band or marching band in some way, shape, or form. I specifically am really pushing the concept of playing Your Best Nightmare and Finale in the concert band. Anyways, needless to say, I was hyped when this prompt was dealt to the band. I quickly raised my hand and soon noticed that many people around me were also raising their hands as well. My band teacher accepted this and looked back at the drum major who sparked the question. With a twinkle in his eye, my band teacher told the drum major, "I think it's time for a change." What a great world that would have been to live in. And actually, less than a year after I had this dream, my band teacher announced to me that one of the new pep band songs he'd add this year to the roster is none other than Megalovania. We did it, boys! Popcorn in the schoolyard. This dream was really short but quite influential. I was in the large empty cement parking area of my elementary school when I was in kindergarten through first grade, even though at the time of the dream I was far from being in elementary school. I realized that I was in a dream and I could do other things than just standing in an empty parking lot, but I really wanted to try to summon food above all else. I used the summoning trick of imagining something behind you and turning around to retrieve it, with a textbook white and red container filled with popcorn. It worked first try, and I ate a few kernels of the popcorn before I woke up. I remember when I ate the popcorn, it tasted exactly like popcorn in the real world, right down to the little hint of butter and salt. Man, was it good. McDonald's summoning. In this dream, I was in the kitchen of my house, and I immediately discerned that I was dreaming. I exited the kitchen into our back porch and used the imagine something behind you summoning trick, but this time with a bag of McDonald's. It surprisingly worked on the first try, and I grabbed the bag off the shelf and went outside to eat my meal at our picnic table on the nice dream day. Once I got to the picnic table, I remember taking the food items out of the McDonald's bag, and upon opening, I saw that the cheeseburgers I summoned were covered in brightly colored frosting. The colors of the frosting on top of the cheeseburgers were yellow, pink, and cyan. I then suddenly woke up. Didn't even get to try the cheeseburgers. Maybe it was for the better, though. Plush Ventures content. In this stream, all I did was see a playlist containing multiple plush videos, the playlist being named Plush Vengers Season 2. There was even a nice little logo for the Plush Vengers franchise and YouTube channel on the side of the playlist. The playlist contained content from multiple different plush creators, the playlist itself containing exactly 61 videos. These videos on the playlist were seemingly here to keep fans of the Plush Vengers up to date on the lore leading up to either the first or second Plush Vengers movie. I was very excited and ready to watch all 61 of these videos for the lore, because unlike those babies who complain about having to watch Marvel shows to stay up to date on the Marvel lore, I like unnecessary amounts of content pertaining to a franchise. Heck, I even made myself suffer through She-Hulk for the lore. She-Hulk! The following statement was created before Secret Invasion came out. Yeah, I take everything I said back. Anywho, I was really excited about this content because I had wanted to see something like this for weeks. A type of plush content that was quality and led up to something greater. When I woke up from this dream, I was kinda disappointed because I was really hyped to watch this Plush Vengers Season 2 content. But my disappointment was easily tainted by the fact that it was Christmas morning. Yeah. Sing along. In this interesting dream, I was walking around a large Goodwill-like store with my mother and cat lover. The store containing everyday objects like clothing, food, kitchen supplies, and more. For whatever reason, when we were walking through the store, my mom had the idea of trying to make the most embarrassing or silly things happen to me. But in the dream, I took this more as a game and challenge to make the awkward situation into fun. For my next embarrassment game challenge, my mom had us walk past multiple shoppers to get into the aisle she wanted us in. The ladies' intimate aisle. My mom was smart in her choice of having us in this aisle because it definitely would cause the most embarrassing outcome to put a teenage boy in an awkward aisle that like that of the yeah, like that of the ladies' intimate aisle. Even though I've talked about this aisle as an aisle that we went to, it wasn't really an aisle at all. It was more of an outside half of an aisle in a corner of the store. I looked at my options and opportunities as we walked up to the aisle, noticing the shelves were only filled with bras. After not too long of deciding, I decided that the goofiest thing for me to do was put on one of the bras myself. Despite the fact that this was basically stealing, I had some good second thoughts that I was concerned about after making my decision. The idea really wouldn't work with my shirt on, so for the plan to fully work, I decided that I would have to take off my shirt and then put on the bra for full effect. At the time of the dream, this seemed absolutely hilarious, hysterical, I might even say. But looking back, it seems like I might have started to take things a little far. While I pondered how to be the goofiest in this aisle, I heard a nice sound coming from behind me, a man singing Silent Night. The singing must have caused me to decide not to go through with my schemes, because the next thing I did was look behind me to figure out who was singing. As I looked behind me, I saw an older white overweight guy with his similar wife shopping nearby, still singing Silent Night. At this moment, I also noticed that there was some sort of Christmas song playing over the speakers of the store as well. Yet, the exact song that was playing, I'm not too sure of. The candidates I have of what song was playing in order of likeliness are as follows: In Eggshell's Deo, Away in a Manger, O Christmas Tree, and O Tannenbarrow. I started to sing along with a man, continuing the melody of Silent Night, as others began to catch on as well. Instead of singing Silent Night, though, the other customers in the store began to sing whatever the song on the intercom was. Soon enough, it seemed like everyone in the store was singing the intercom song together, but me and the man beside me were still singing the original and almost counter melody of Silent Night. The clashing between the two songs made a beautiful sort of blend and clash, but at some point I remember singing the lyrics of Silent Night to the theme of the intercom song, so maybe at some point I lost my way. I do remember a really cool part of the dream singing, where in one part of the song, all of the voices came together in a harmonious blend, where I could see the top of the building visibly shaking due to all of our singing. Eventually, the intercom song faded out, and in turn, so did many of the intercom song singers, leaving just the man and I singing Silent Night once again, until we also eventually stopped. Next, I decided to head outside and walk beside this cold and snowy store building exterior on a sidewalk in the parking lot towards my dad and the vehicle we arrived to the store in. While I walked to the vehicle, I remember fully realizing how absolutely massive the store actually was. It was almost the size of Walmart. Who knows, maybe the interior is just smaller than the exterior? Anyways, as I walked to the vehicle, I noticed that either my dad was following far behind a man in a red sweater, or a man in a red sweater was following far behind my dad. Intrigued, I continued to walk towards them, but not at a faster pace, as the situation didn't seem like it was incredibly serious or horrible. The dream ended, though, before I got to see what was going on. Later that day, in the first church service of 2023, we not only had a different-ish worship team, but we also did all 4 of the songs at the beginning, instead of 3 at the beginning and 1 at the end. Just an interesting detail. Hotel McDonald's. Before I gained consciousness in this dream, I remember going up to my father and asking him if I could go to McDonald's, and he affirmed that I could, leading to the events of this dream. In this dream, I was venturing around a large hotel-like structure, with large windows covering most of the walls, which presented a forested outdoors, seemingly trapping the building from the outside world. As I traversed through the empty hotel structure, I came across a Starbucks that was part of the hotel, even though I was looking for the McDonald's I got permission to go to. After I noticed that I had accidentally wandered into a Starbucks, I awkwardly started to walk out of the Starbucks. As I walked out of the Starbucks to a different part of the hotel, I saw the Starbucks employee looking surprised to see me, as he greeted me as if we were old friends. I didn't take any notice of the Starbucks employee and was instead much more invested in a long, dark hallway next to the exit I was taking. Looking back, it likely led to the bathroom, but the hallway did have an eerie feel to it when I witnessed it in the dream. Soon enough, I made it to the McDonald's, except something was off. The sub-hotel restaurant I was in, I remembered as the McDonald's I had been in before, except instead of the McDonald's logo that used to be on the welcome sign, there was a cartoonish picture of a blue fish on a white platter, the sign reading something to the effect of, "The best restaurant you'll ever eat at." As I looked for answers, I got caught off guard by two workers in the visible kitchen who were trying to clean up a brown liquid spill on the floor. I originally thought the liquid was, well, let's just say something that would get those workers fired, but I eventually realized that it was actually chocolate cake batter they were cleaning up. I was confused and didn't know what to do. Where did the McDonald's go, and why was this new restaurant here instead? I couldn't understand any of it, and I woke up. Driving a car phenomenon. This phenomenon is one of the rarest phenomena I have ever experienced in my dreams, mainly just because I steer clear from what initiates this problem in my dreams on a regular basis. The driving a car phenomenon happens when, in one of my dreams, I hop into a car, truck, or really any vehicle and either begin to drive it around the dream world or just attempt to start up the vehicle. Whenever I attempt to do any of these things, though, I lose control of the dream, can't escape the vehicle, and my immediate surroundings and vision begin to get darker yet darker, as I am either transported into the next dream or into the waking world. Lately, this phenomenon has broken into a large variety of tragedies involving me driving a car or truck, causing mass damage, but since this doesn't really go with the phenomenon, this is all I'm going to speak on that matter. Because of this phenomenon, I usually decide not to drive cars in my dreams, but in some cases, I do the exact opposite. Long Journey's End Phenomenon. The long journey's end phenomenon occurs at the end of longer dreams. These dreams, most of the time, seeming like a sort of journey or adventure. The phenomenon itself comes to pass specifically when I wake up from one of those journey or adventure dreams previously mentioned, specifically feeling as though I have just completed a sort of long journey, as I have just achieved a sort of grand and existential accomplishment through this journey I never truly went on. The feeling of waking up from one of these dreams is almost unexplainable, but the best I can describe it is probably in comparison to this type of scenario. You're lying in bed right before you are about to go to sleep, as at that moment you feel yourself fully looking back on your life and how far you've come. After this realization and retrospective, you just continue to lie in bed, just thinking about your thoughts, unable to truly perceive or stop the unstoppable nature of time. Dang it! I just gave away a possible entry for the iceberg without even noticing, didn't I? No! Lucid adventuring route phenomenon. Lesser occurring phenomenon here, mainly because I have to be lucid to experience it. The lucid adventuring route phenomenon occurs whenever I am at my house in one of my dreams, become lucid, and decide to take a specific route from my house to explore, or adventure for the rest of my dream. The route in question is going straight down one main street road in my town beside our house, that, if taken straight, leads the traveler to a dead end where my 2nd through 4th grade elementary school is. Ironically enough, whenever I have used this path in any of my lucid dreams, I never end up at the school it should take me to. Instead, the path typically reveals to me the alien town I currently reside in. This entry will also probably matter in a later layer, so I hope you all remember this. Remembrance phenomenon. The remembrance phenomenon is the absolute pinnacle of dream phenomena out there, and it's pretty obvious why this is. The phenomenon states that once I wake up from any of my dreams, I will have different varying levels of remembrance and recollection of the dream I just experienced. Sometimes when I wake up from a dream, I'll remember it down to every last detail, and will likely go straight to recording it, while other times I'll wake up from a dream only able to recall minuscule fragments of it, and end up forgetting the rest of it as the day progresses. Sometimes the exact opposite of this scenario will happen though, where I can barely remember any part of the dream or dreams I just had, but throughout the day I began to remember the dream more vividly. I think the most interesting example of the remembrance phenomenon is when I somehow unlock fragments of or entire dreams themselves due to something I do in the waking world. Sometimes it's a word that triggers the dream to come back into memory, and sometimes it's something completely obscure, like a scenario circumstance I'm writing in the back of my head. All I can say about the remembrance phenomenon is that sometimes it comes in clutch, but most of the other times, it's just a real pain. Long day equals deep sleep phenomenon. This is one of the most obvious phenomena out there. The long day equals deep sleep phenomenon consists of the fact that typically after a long day of either grueling work or just a very busy schedule, whenever I go to sleep, I can feel that it is deep sleep. It's kind of hard to explain, but mostly the phenomenon causes me to feel like I've just experienced a deep, good sleep, which is quite calming to feel. The best I can compare to this phenomenon is, imagine you just got done with a day where you worked yourself down to the bone, blood, sweat, tears, and even more sweat, and went to watch a movie. Would you agree that watching that movie would feel deeper and more relaxing than watching a movie after a full day of doing practically nothing? That's what I thought. Plush phenomenon. Although this may seem like a very boring and predictable phenomenon, I assure you, it's probably not going to be as boring as you think. Now, as you may know, a good amount of a person's dreams will contain their aspirations, desires, and inclinations. And as you may know by now, I like plushes. Now, what does that mean for the plush phenomenon? Well, the plush phenomenon occurs when, in a dream, whether the dream is centered around the concept or not, a theme involving plushes takes place. Some examples of the plush phenomenon are, but are not limited to, searching for a plush or plushes in a store, receiving a plush package in the mail, recording or watching a plush collection, or simply encountering a plush I find interesting. Other examples of the plush phenomenon are dreams where I will simply have plushes and am attempting to make a video, or am simply trying to obtain plushes. All these examples of this phenomenon are common, and that makes sense because I take part in these activities on a regular basis. As with most of all phenomena though, there are some interesting examples of the plush phenomenon. Sometimes I'll have dreams containing plushes that don't exist in the real world, such as an upcoming entry, A Very Minecraft Vacation, where in the dream I explored a store full of epic, fun, and greatly designed Minecraft plushes that simply don't exist in the real world. Sometimes the plush in my dream will represent something greater, such as the Sans plush and the Sans Deltarune plush dream, seemingly representing how Sans in Deltarune is not the same character as the character in Undertale, or how he's on vacation in comparison to his appearance in Undertale. All this being said, I'd have to say my favorite type of plush dream I've ever had would have to be the fake collection dream. Now, as you can imagine, a fake collection dream is just a dream where I look at or through a fake plush collection. But the fake collection title of Fake Collection Dreams is specifically in reference to one great fake collection dream I had a while back. In the dream, I went into a nicely lighted toy storage room in our basement, but instead of toys all along the walls, there were shelves full of plushes and large cardboard boxes full of plushes as well, all part of my collection. The plushes along the wall were mainly Mario plushes, all different types. Some I have in real life, like Mario and Luigi, and some I don't, like PD Piranha. In this dream, all I did was inspect the plushes, looking into the room in awe of the beauty of the plushes in the room. I ended up collecting plushes I liked as I looked through the cardboard boxes and such, but didn't do anything else. In a similar dream, I ended up finding a secret compartment in my old closet that led to a huge room full of old things I owned, such as plushes and toys. These plush phenomenon dreams about fake collections are likely alive due to my desire to collect many plushes, and in turn, I have huge and diverse collections in my dreams. I always appreciate having a good plush dream though, as they're mostly always a blast. Layer 2. best described as a more dim version of Layer 1. Some of the stuff gets to be a little bit more existential, a tad bit more disturbing in whatever way you look at it. Most of these dreams that I have in Layer 2 actually feel like general cohesive stories instead of just fragments of stories like in Layer 1. Layer 2 entries are a lot more interesting, and yeah, that's all I got. Overall, Layer 2 is another step in the water. So let's get into Layer 2. Chess Invasion. In this dream, I was at our dining room table, across from my little sister, who was on the other side of the table. We were playing some good old Super Mario chess, but something was off about the board and characters. My little sister had the Mario pieces to use in the dream, and I had the Bowser pieces. Strangely though, at one point in the dream, I noticed that on her side of the board, there laid a small inscription on the side of the board, reading my full name in a small black lettering. On my side of the board, however, I remember noting that there was a special inscription on my side as well, but instead reading Steve T. The really interesting part I remember about this dream was the amount and type of pieces we had. Like I said before, my little sister had the Mario pieces, but on her side in particular, she had around 3 random pieces left. I don't remember which type. On my side, I had 3 random Bowser pieces as well, but I soon noticed that I had an abundance of one particular piece, that being the Rook, Goomba. After I positioned all of my Rook pieces out on the board, I saw that I had 2 entire rows of Goombas. Vegan Setup. In this dream, I was at a dark stadium with my family, and I was in a mattress-like bed with at least one of my best friends. We played a fairly dumb game where we had to search through the mess of blankets, pillows, and other things in the bed to find all of my custom PVZ plushes. Eventually, we found them all, and I took them off the bed and positioned them in front of a sort of gap between our seats and the seats next to us. Just imagine that this gap was like the gap between couch cushions, and if anything fell into the gap, it would fall for miles until it met with the ground of the stadium. Not reachable, likely, forever. Out of absolutely nowhere, that vegan teacher launched into a wall, head first, right next to me. Like it didn't affect her, she said loudly in a funny catchphrase, "Raise your hands if you don't eat meat." She lifted both of her hands, and as her hands were lifted up, she made her hands go out of their way just to knock every single one of my custom PVZ plushes into the gap of despair. All of my work making those PVZ plushes was taken away in an instant. I grabbed that vegan teacher by her shoulders, filled with anger and frustration because of what had happened to me, ready to hurt her because of what she did to me. My family and friends watched in horror as I held that vegan teacher in my grasp, as I heard a wise voice in my head telling me, "Stop! What would Jesus do?" I disregarded the wise advice though, and full of emotion, I yelled at that vegan teacher as loud as I could, "You're not funny!" While all of this happened and that vegan teacher was in my grasp, she didn't act worried or try to stop any of it, and only wore a smug grin on her face. After I was finished yelling at that vegan teacher, a voice from within another area of the stadium called out to that vegan teacher, checking to see if she was okay. I had been set up by the meddling teacher and fell for her trap because I couldn't control my emotions. Goofy. In this dream, I was standing in a large room that looked like a combination of my Nana and Papa's church sanctuary and my middle school cafeteria, although the room mainly resembled the cafeteria. On the opposite wall from where the tables most predominantly were in the cafeteria, there were many students who waited to be served their food, like they were in a lunch line. Inside little segments taken out of the wall, there were the serving stations, where predominantly freshmen served everyone their food, serving as substitute lunch ladies. I noticed a short freshman couple serving fruit together to the students, but after they were finished serving the students their fruit, they took their large spoon ladles and began to eat the fruit out of the serving container itself. I looked at them in disgust, for they didn't even seem to care that they were actively spreading germs to whoever would be served the fruit next. They did a decent job of discreetly snagging some scoops of fruit though, because directly after they started secretly eating, a rowdy classmate of mine came by and begun to eat the fruit like it was nobody's business, which was very, very messy. I stared at them, wanting them to stop, wanting to tell them to stop, until I was suddenly teleported to a piano of my own in the middle of a church service in my Nana and Papa's church sanctuary. I was sitting alongside two other piano players, all with our own grand pianos, as the congregation was continuously silent, like they were waiting for us to play, like a performance. One of the piano players, a white boy child, began to play the Fortnite default dance on repeat, and in response, I played a B natural for every note that he played. I then got up from my piano bench, turned around, and walked out to the exit of the sanctuary, into the welcome area. Once I was in the welcome area, I found a cylindrical object made out of blue wool that had another smaller cylindrical object on top of it that was also made of blue wool. I held onto the top cylinder with all my strength, and out of nowhere the cylindrical structure moved at lightning speed like it was on a circular track, all the way to the other side of the room. I heard an elderly man shout to me in response, saying, "Sorry!" as I was flung back to where I originally stood. I got off the blue cylindrical structure and walked down to meet with my family, as we were approached by my youth pastor, the one who has the resemblance of the depiction of Jesus. He talked indirectly to my sisters and I, saying things like, "Oh, isn't it my favorite family?" I specifically remember that he stated that I was his favorite part of the family before the dream abruptly ended. Asgore? This dream was short but simple. In this dream, all I remember is that I had to fight my friends in an Undertale-style fight, Undertale HUD and all. The circumstances did have an interesting resemblance to the Asgore fight though. Now, what does that mean? That I had never fought anyone up to this point? That they were hard to fight? That they didn't want to fight me? Or that their boss themes absolutely slapped? Well, I simply don't know. Manufacture escape. In this dream, I was at a food manufacturing place as I spoke to someone who sounded similar to my close cousin about how we would evade some unknown and dangerous threat. I knew that it was night outside, even though I was in the manufacturing facility, and I suggested that we could go to a park and hide, as she said we should instead go to a graveyard to bury ourselves, her trying to inventively get across that we'd die either way. We decided to go ask my mom if I could leave the manufacturing place, and once we found her, she told us that I could go. This unknown partner of mine and I started to walk around the manufacturing place, seemingly to find an exit. It was at this moment that I noticed that I was not with my close cousin, but instead with a classmate that just talked similarly to her. I asked my classmate why she goes by a nickname instead of her real name while we passed by the little bites making area, but I never got a response. We eventually ran into an area of the food making place where there was a table full of freshly made tacos in little company brand paper bags. I took one, but never actually ate it for some reason. In the dream, I realized over time that the companion I was with didn't know that we were in a dream, and had constant empathy for the workers. As my companion and I saw a worker having trouble replacing at the bottom of a cubic freezer, my companion turned into a tall white man who rushed over to help. Finally, I decided that I was done with these aimless shenanigans and exited the manufacturing building. Upon exiting, I noticed that it was day as I stepped out of the back of the building into a cement-floored loading zone, surrounded by a suburban neighborhood densely surrounded by a multitude of trees. I saw that there were many little kids around where I had entered, ready to play a game with my sister, Catlover, who was also there. I participated in the game by escaping the manufacturing place's presence as The Choice from Toby Fox played in the background. I mistakenly thought the song was Don't Give Up by Toby Fox though, so I made a little remark to the kids saying, "Don't give up, guys." I eventually ran enough to get to a sidewalk where, for whatever reason, I looked to my left. On my left, a couple of blocks away, was a cheetah silently watching me, and once it saw me seeing it, it began its pursuit. Not wanting to get jump scared or killed, I closed my eyes in hopes of escaping the overgrown cat. Right before the dream ended, I could remember that I heard Cat Lover remarking that she saw a cheetah nearby. Expansion of the blob. In this dream, I was in an amusement park and was implied to be doing an experiment on a blob-like creature. The blob couldn't move but ate anything that it touched and grew whenever it ate anything. It got to a point where the blob was so large because of what it had eaten that large sections of the park were entirely closed off because of the blob. In a moment in the dream, I looked towards a rest area in the amusement park where benches sat facing a grassy wall, but soon enough, the wall was the blob. People sat on these benches and around this specific rest area and never noticed the blob's presence, but I knew that if the blob got any bigger, it would start to eat people, like me. I frantically ran around the park, panicking and trying to find an exit, until my dad struck up a deal with me, and agreed to help me leave the infected park. Before I left, someone came up to me, presumably a scientist, and profusely apologized to me, begging for me to stay, but I decided to leave anyways, through an oddly placed door in the park that led to the back door exit to my house. I walked into my backyard where I noticed that it was now a snowy night, and rushed to get inside the van that was placed in front of our garage. As I rushed over to the van, my field of vision has begun to progressively get darker yet darker, but I made it inside the van nonetheless. I sat in the seat directly behind the driver's seat, but somehow was able to drive the van from my position. I drove down the road towards downtown Dreamtown in the dark van and decided to ask my dad if he could turn the lights back up in the van, and he responded that he never wanted to take the van in the first place. The dream slowly came to a close when I mercilessly drove down the snowy night road, illegally swerving around many cars as I drove to anywhere I could. The base rooms. Gert? This dream is one of the few selections of dreams I've had that highly resembles the back rooms, but in my basement. In this dream, for most of the entirety of it, I traversed the expanse of a backrooms-like basement lit with dim lights where my little sister was close behind. The rooms seemed to be randomly generated like the backrooms, which were all mainly empty, except for a small few which contained basement-y items scattered across the floor. The basement expanse was very similar to the backrooms, mainly because of how many rooms there were, and specifically how the number of rooms confirmed that my sister and I weren't exploring any normal basement, but instead an unexplainable anomaly. At some point, while traversing, I stopped in my tracks after entering one of the rooms, because at that moment, I had recalled a specific memory of a basement-related dream I'd had before. In this memory dream that I've actually had in the real world, I was in an extremely dark version of my normally sized basement and entered a misplaced bathroom door on the basement wall. But upon exiting the tiny and dark bathroom, I realized that I had been transported to an extremely spaced out version of the basement, resembling a cave or cavern. It actually kind of looked like a bat cave. Anyways, I continued to travel with my little sister quietly behind me, and room after room, we didn't find anything. Not until we came across a very strange and interesting room that changed the entire perspective of the dream. The room was enclosed like a dead end, but also contained a windowsill that was covered by a curtain. We went over to inspect the curtain and opened it up, which revealed our dog, Gertie, who laid on the edge of the window. We ushered the dog off of the windowsill and looked to investigate the window's contents in full. The window, to our surprise, presented a heightened view of our front porch. Searching in Walmart 2. Rick? In the sequel to Searching in Walmart 1, which was cut last second for the Iceberg draft, so you'll never be able to know what went down in the original. I started out this dream in a dim and mysterious Walmart toy aisle, looking for another toy. In this dream, I actually knew what I was searching for, though. What I searched for in this dream was none other than the popular Kirby plush, the cute hamster boy himself, Rick. I only searched on one side of the aisle in this dream, coming across a lot of different types of toys, but I couldn't seem to find my boy Rick. I got a little frustrated in the dream because after my thorough search, I still couldn't find Rick. I came across a plush display box in the dream, full of unexplainable and bewildering plushes. All of the plushes inside of the box were different shapes, sizes, and bodies, and the common connection between them all was that they all shared the same Rick color scheme. All of the plushes were Rick colored like a T-Rex dinosaur that donned Rick's colors, which just confused me and frustrated me further. Never did find poor Rick. R.I.P. Gaining all of Luigi Fan Quado 1's plushes. This dream, despite being in layer 2, is actually kinda sad if you think about it. In this dream, the popular and great YouTuber known as Luigi Fan Quado 1 had passed, but that wasn't the theme of the dream. Instead, for some reason, I was told that I would get all of Luigi Fan's PVZ plushes, which I was excited to receive. Don't ask why Stuffy Cat, of all people, received all of Luigi Fan's PVZ plushes, because the best answer I got was that I was a part of some sort of Make-A-Wish program. Oh boy, is this dream universe dark. Anyways, in the actual meat of the dream, I just patiently waited for Luigi Fan's plushes to be brought to me, as I, for some reason, waited for the plushes where Luigi Fan would make his Plants vs. Zombies pool videos. I woke up before I could receive any of the plushes, and was disappointed that I wasn't actually receiving all of Luigi Fan's PVZ plushes. Wrong mindset, Steffi Cat. Wrong mindset. School boot camp? In this dream, I was at the entrance to some sort of school building with one of my white guy best friends. We walked up a set of wide stairs that led to the entrance of the schoolhouse quickly because we knew that we were late for something. We almost got to the entrance of the school, but were stopped by our middle school gym teacher, who is known for his militaristic strictness, who blocked the entrance to the building on my friend's side. The teacher, who looked very frustrated and angry, looked at my friend and firmly said, "You're late," but then looked at me, which seemed to lessen his anger. Seemingly at least a little resolved, the gym teacher spoke something to us, almost like a mantra we were supposed to repeat back to him. That saying being, "I feel inclined to be there on time." We didn't repeat anything back to him, but he turned around and led us to the entrance of the building anyways. As we entered the building, the entrance was a wooden doorway revealing a dark and woody environment ahead of us. My friend looked back at me for a second, put his pointer fingers up to the corners of his mouth, and forced a V-shaped and unnatural smile. This was extremely funny to me in the dream, so I tried to, as best as I could, contain my laughter as the gym teacher glanced back at us. Looking back on this smile, though, especially after I woke up from the dream, it was actually incredibly disturbing due to how unnatural and V-shaped it was, as previously explained. I regained consciousness as I sat in a dimly lit living room of a wooden house, band kids and just kids from school all around the room. The room was busy, and the band kids generally conversed with each other, sticking together and waiting for something. I looked out of the only exit to the room, which revealed a hallway going left and right, and saw our band teacher quickly walk from the right of the hallway to the left, seemingly in a hurry. I regained consciousness one last time as I sat at a long, white fold-up table, which will be seen in more detail later in Picnic at the Graveyard, except there's no food and we're in a dark room. I saw one of my cool friends from across the table, and confused, asked her why we were here. I don't remember anything after that. What's a flute? In this dream, I was sitting at my table in my algebra classroom, facing the rest of the classroom, everyone's attention on me, and for the most part. In my lap, I had my flute, and to the side of me, I had open packages of candy such as M&Ms and Big Smarties lying on my table. The events of the dream are pretty simple. From time to time, someone would raise their hand and I would call on them, and they would ask me their question about what I had in my possession. If the question was on track to figuring out what I had, like the first question, "Does it play music?" I would reward them with a piece of candy that seemingly just teleported straight to the person's desk. But also, if the questions were stupid and not even close to being about a flute, like, "Can I write it?" I still gave out candy to the questioners. saying that they were getting closer and closer to what it was. Sometimes, when I was being asked the questions, I would lean over to my table and eat an M&M or two, just because, yet they tasted sweet like a Skittle instead of chocolate like an M&M. Near the end of the dream, an older girl at the back of the class asked her question, but my attention fell on a girl who sat right next to her. That girl was the first chair flutist of my freshman year, who was just paying attention to her phone, disinterested in the game. I sure wonder why. Gimkit's Claw Machine. In this dream, I was in an arcade place and played a claw machine, with no one else around. The claw machine game that I played was no normal claw machine. It was actually electronic and didn't contain any actual claws or prizes, and was actually just a game-like screen. The claw machine game itself was actually just a 3D game where you controlled a claw on a 3D plane and you had to land the claw around a big red button in the middle of the screen. Even though it looked 3D, all I really had to do was put the claw from the game to the exact middle of the screen and it would scratch over the top of the button, granting me not so amusing plushes every time I won. I got so good at this game that I could lay on the ground in front of the machine while I played the game, knowing that I'd win anyways, and I accumulated a bunch of plushes. But after a while of playing, something changed about the game. Next thing I knew, the game had changed from a red button tapping game to a screen that resembled an actual claw machine, where there were many Mario, Luigi, and Toad plushes that I could try to get. When I got in the special mode, I couldn't help but feel a little discouraged for other casual players of the game, because it was implied that I had saved up all of my arcade money to spend on this game, and this game alone. And you could only get to this special mode by playing excessively, like I had. Anyways, I went for the Luigi plush, making sure to line up my shot perfectly to intercept the special plush. I took so much time lining up the shot, I pressed the button right as the timer for the claw machine game went off. Sadly, even though I should have been able to win the Luigi, the press didn't count because the time was gone, and the game led me to a screen showing how many points I gained. After this, I received something that looked like a Monopoly property on my screen, which was presented in a manner very similarly to getting a new life after you lose all of your lives in the new Super Mario Bros. Wii U and Deluxe games. Suddenly, the game changed dramatically into a sort of final boss against a white Gimkit player. My dad came by to check in on me, and most predominantly told me that we would be leaving very shortly. I asked my dad for some extra time, and my dad told me that I had 5 minutes left, and I was alright with this amount of time. I knew that if I won the boss, I'd be able to have a retry at the Mario plush claw machine, so I tried to hype myself up by going to the music selection screen and playing a remix of Asgore and Mario Odyssey's Underground Moon Caverns. On a totally separate note, that song absolutely slaps. I really want to hear an actual remix of it because oh my gosh, it was so good. Anyways, I got into the game's boss finally and approached the white Gimkit character on a snowy hill, ready to battle. Unfortunately though, I got too close and the Gimkit player used an attack similar to Waddle Doos but with snowflakes, killing me. One of the most disappointing moments in Dream history, I'll tell ya. My dad came back and said something to the effect of, "Alright, we're leaving soon. I better be seeing a save button," as he talked just like Cat Lover, explaining that I needed to get to the van but also hide the bag of toys because my little sister would obviously be jealous. Basketball Elementary. This dream started with me in an altered version of my elementary school, where instead of the buildings being 3 connected ones, all there was the leftmost building, which was a lot taller than usual. The dream started oddly, with me and a group of people walking through the parking lot to the altered elementary school, and the people in my group insisted that they would try to make the dream a classic. Also, as I walked with this group to the school, it was heavily implied that I was a basketball player, and the group I walked with contained my dad and a few of his friends or co-workers. As we got closer to the school, the group sort of teased me about how bad my parking skills were, as they noticed that I parked my car right in front of the entry doors. As I noticed this mistake as well, I ran ahead to get the car out of the way. I walked up the inside closed stairway which led me to the entrance of the building. Once I was at the building's entrance, I noticed what was actually in store for me. The entire building seemed to only contain a large school gym-like environment, with an empty wooden floor and a few puzzles and activities here and there to keep people occupied. I also noticed that, by the door, a taller white cowgirl classmate had her back up against a wall as she spoke into a phone on a lit-up tripod, like she was reporting the news to a TV station or something. I decided that I would use my time in the elementary school by speedrunning each and every single sort of activity they had. The first activity I went to had a white empty puzzle frame and a couple of differently colored shapes that I had to fit into the puzzle frame. I woke up before I even finished it. Fountain drive-by. In this dream, all I did was drive by the van with at least my mom and cat lover in the van with me. I drove the van in uptown Dreamtown, around the back roads of where McDonald's and the other fast food places usually are, but it was the dead of night, and there were no fast food restaurants, only strange fountains. The fountains are a little hard to explain, but they looked kinda white and produced large sprinkles instead of waters, and had weird figures in the middle of the fountains, which looked kinda like statues, and sprinkles were also coming out of their mouths. Maybe they produced glitter, not sprinkles. All I remember is that they were very colorful and bright. Every time we drove by one of the fountains, my mom insisted that we should turn and go to one of the fountains, but I never listened. It almost felt like I was protecting her from something that she didn't know was bad. False timing. For context, in the waking world, before this dream happened, it was 6 a.m. The dream started with me in our kitchen, where I saw that it was late at night because of how dark it was outside, and the only lights on in our house being the living room ones. I saw on the kitchen stove clock that it was 11 p.m., so I went to the living room to confirm that it was actually 11. I asked my parents, who were sitting on the couch, along with my sisters, if it was actually 11, and therefore I would have about 7 more hours of sleep. They never answered my question, but I decided to go upstairs anyways to snag the extra hours of sleep. I then woke up immediately as I went upstairs in the dream, and was quite hopeful and happy due to how much time my mind thought I'd have to sleep. I leaned over to my alarm clock, and to my disbelief, it was 6:45, 15 minutes before I was supposed to wake up. Feeling betrayed by my dream, I audibly exclaimed, "Jerk!" as I had been tricked by my own mind. Unfair leaderboard. This dream started with me and one of my somewhat close friends in a big cement-covered dark playground area. There were countless cement pillars all around, the cement area looking deserted, even though I was among a larger group of people. We were supposedly at the cement playground to compete in a school contest that was dually a project as well. Everyone was paired up with a partner to work on the project with, and I was partnered with the somewhat close friend I mentioned earlier. The contest seemed like it was going to be about who could drop something from the highest height. When it was our turn, we were put on a platform in the clouds, and I leaned over the fence barricade to spit at the ground. Once the results were in, I realized that my partner was on the leaderboard, but I was nowhere to be seen. In fact, instead of my partner being paired up with me on the leaderboard, it showed that she was actually partners with Agent Smith from The Matrix. I got a bit frustrated and angry that I was not represented on the leaderboard, but in the end, maybe I was Agent Smith all along? The bathroom phenomenon is a phenomenon where, in my dream, I enter, explore, or have to go to the bathroom. This phenomenon usually only occurs in what I'd say are weirdcore dreams, where the vibe of the dream is just odd. Most of these bathrooms dreams use disproportionate sizes of school bathrooms, or the specifically gendered bathrooms you'd see in a restaurant. The thing is though, the bathrooms in these dreams never seem to be correct. They're always strange in some sort of way, like an open shower room bathroom, an incredibly large bathroom, and even bathrooms that mix both genders into one large bathroom. One dream I hold closely to the concept of the dream bathroom phenomenon is one where I entered a school bathroom but upon entering, I noticed that the bathroom was 100 times larger than normal and had cubicle-like stalls as far as the eye could see. Also, even if a bathroom in a dream is restricted to the usual girls' bathroom and boys' bathroom, it rarely matters, and both genders will usually be in the same bathroom anyways. Another strange bathroom dream I've had, which was extremely weird, was one where I went inside a girl's bathroom to see if it was any different than the boys' bathroom, and to my surprise, the girls' bathroom had urinals and disposable funnels for the urinals. I don't know why my mind holds bathrooms to such strange standards in my dream, so I guess it'll forever be a bathroom mystery. Okay, fine, I'll stop grossing you guys out now. Media influence phenomenon. This phenomenon, while uncommon, I still find quite interesting because of the few examples I've got of this phenomenon. The media influence phenomenon can be explained by understanding that many things can affect one's thoughts, and therefore dreams. That being understood, it would make sense that something popular in media, or being seen by me multiple times, would result in it showing up in my dreams. An example of this is a dream I had a while back that almost shockingly mirrors another person's description of their dream. The night before I had this particular dream, I remember listening to Midnight Krick's Personal Dreams and Nightmares Iceberg. Yup, we're back at the OG! And right before going to bed, I saw something Brooklyn Nine-Nine themed. Seemingly because of this, that night I had a dream where I watched Jake Peralta, a character from the show, pull out multiple empty bottles with little orange residue out of his pant pockets, a scenario shared by Krick on his Iceberg. I've had multiple dreams containing references from popular media in my dreams, simply just because I know about them. That being said, yeah, this phenomenon isn't too crazy, at least if you understand that if you put certain types of thoughts in your head, especially close to you sleeping, there's a good chance you'll dream about those types of thoughts. Like, if you watch a scary movie before going to bed, you might have a nightmare, etc. One last example I won't get too far into is Deltarune and Undertale themed dreams, which are obviously influenced by Toby Fox's media and sometimes other media, as shown in a dream not present in this iceberg named Undertale Ultra Pacifist Route, where I did a pacifist run with genocide methods, like encountering the most monsters I could. And in the end of the run, I saw a cutscene similar to William Afton's Springlock failure occur, but with Asgore and the 6 human souls. Weird. Dream inside a dream phenomenon. The dream inside a dream phenomenon is an easily understandable phenomenon to my knowledge, and is closely tied to a later phenomenon, the false awakening phenomenon. The dream inside a dream phenomenon, one of my least occurring phenomena, is easily explained by its title. The dream inside a dream phenomenon is when, in a dream, I have a dream. Unlike the false awakening phenomenon though, this phenomenon doesn't contain dreams where I wake up from a dream and am falsely taken to another dream that I perceive to be reality. This phenomenon is much more complicated. The dream inside a dream phenomenon only occurs when I am in a dream and decide to go to sleep and have a dream within another dream. Waking up from the second layer of the dream could lead to the false awakening phenomenon, but that doesn't matter right now. Due to this phenomenon being so specific, it has only happened once before, in a dream I had when I was young. In that dream, I was in a third-person point of view, and walked around my house until I reached the living room. I decided to curl up on the living room floor and take a nap, which led me to a dream I don't remember, which could also be the later Be Quiet dream that's in layer 5, so. And then I woke up from the dream and continued on like nothing ever happened. What day is it phenomenon? The what day is it phenomenon is a pretty self-explanatory entry on this iceberg. As one could guess, the what day is it phenomenon occurs when I wake up from a usually deep and long journey-like dream and cannot recall what day it is. Now, this isn't a, oh no, I momentarily forgot about recent things only to remember them later kind of thing. This is a complete inability to decide what day it is. This, for some reason, usually happens on the weekends, either on a Saturday where I don't know if there's school or not, or on a Sunday where I don't know if I should be getting ready for school or not. It's a very surreal feeling to not even know what day it is. The closest I can get to comparing this feeling with something else, while extreme, would be comparing it to the feeling of someone who just woke up from a coma and doesn't know what year it is. Yes, I went that far. Lucid dreaming. No, we're not talking about that one song from that one person, don't worry. I still see your shadows in my room. A lucid dream is a dream where you are aware that you are dreaming. From there, you can attempt to control what goes on and happens in your dream. One way that you can tell that you're dreaming is through a reality check. Will be explained later on. One entry later on, but still. Entering lucid dreaming is usually obtained through a reality check, but sometimes one can just look at their circumstances or surroundings, accept that they're dreaming, and go on from there. There are almost countless possibilities in lucid dreaming, because after you become lucid, if you know how to, you can activate your own creative mode in the reality of your dreams. You can do things from exploring your dream town, getting a dream dog, or meeting a dream president. All you can do is completely up to your imagination. Not everyone can fully control their lucid dreams though, which either leads to being subject to your dream story, feeling hopeless, or even initiating a lucid nightmare. I don't have too many lucid dreams, but whenever I do, I usually ruin them in some shape or form by making myself wake up, but they can be pretty fun in most cases. For more on lucid dreaming, I suggest the channel Explore Lucid Dreaming for more info on ways to enter and just general facts on lucid dreaming. Because, he's back, guys! He's not Beluga anymore, we did it! Reality checking. This isn't too much of a phenomenon, but instead a daily checking routine. A reality check is basically a movement or action that you can perform in your dream and the real world to figure out if you're awake or not. To make this make more sense, I'll bring up some examples of a reality check. Some popular forms of reality checking are as follows: attempting to push your pointer finger through the palm of your other hand, counting the number of fingers on one of or both of your hands, plugging your nose and attempting to breathe through it, and looking at a set numbers such as the time, looking away, and looking back at it. Although these actions sound silly, if performed correctly and enough for your brain to accept them as daily routine, you can begin to perform these actions in your dreams as well. Now, how does that change anything? You might be asking yourself. Well, to answer your question, it changes things because this action you perform in the real world will almost certainly act differently in your dreams. Yes, when you try to push your finger through your hand, randomly count your fingers, try to breathe through a plugged nose, and look at, away, and back at the time, you will sometimes look strange and not get any crazy results. Whenever you do these things in your dreams, you will get drastically different results. In your dreams, you might be able to push your finger fully through your hand, find out you have 6 or 4 fingers, be able to breathe perfectly fine through a fully plugged nose, and even notice the unreliability of numbers in your dream, causing you to become lucid. All this is quite self-explanatory as to why there are different results in your dreams than real life. The reason the experiences are different is that, as well as dreams try to replicate the real world, dreams are flawed and won't always be the same. For me, I've gotten into lucid dreams using mainly the hand techniques, because they're the easiest in my opinion. But oddly enough, I find myself doing reality checks more in the waking world than in my dreams. It's almost like I'm questioning reality more as a dream than questioning my dreams' false realities. No worries though, I'm still perfectly sane. The Power Seekers. This dream is a lucid dream. In fact, my first ever lucid dream, so it holds a special place in my heart. This is also one of the most successful lucid dreams I've ever had because of my ability to accomplish nearly everything I wanted to do in a dream at the time. Fly, try Dream McDonald's, and talk to my friend's sister. The start of this dream had me sitting on my couch as I thought about the horrible decision I made, that decision being the choice to sew eyebrows onto my pea shooter plush. I held a squash plush with pea shooter's eyebrows in place of its own, even though at the time I didn't even own a squash plush. Within a blink of an eye, though, I was teleported to the exit of my laundry room, looking out into the kitchen where my mother worked at the sink. Whether it was because of the sudden and out-of-place transition, the pea shooter eyebrow conspiracy being brought up, or me having a squash plush, I decided to do a reality check to find out if I was dreaming or not. The reality check I used in the dream had me trying to push my pointer finger through the palm of my other hand, and to my surprise, it worked. At that moment, I figured out that I was dreaming. I walked up to my mom, trying to get her attention from the dishes, and was surprised to see her odd face. My mom's face was not her own, and was instead a sort of mole-like face, with scrunched up, black beady eyes covered by equally small glasses resting on her nose. This didn't disturb me because it looked so cartoonish, but it surprised me nonetheless. My mom spoke to me about the upcoming visitors whose intentions were to ask me a few questions. Right as she notified me about the upcoming visitors, they appeared in front of the kitchen door leading outside, looking at me. They all had black suits on and generally resembled the Japanese businessmen from the special episode of Disney's Shake It Up Made in Japan. The businessmen began professionally ranting about acne and other negative things such as that, which generally made me bored. I decided that I'd leave the house instead of listening to these weirdos rant on about acne, so I opened the door leading outside only to see that the back porch had been changed dramatically. Instead of it being at normal height to the kitchen, the back porch was randomly 10 feet lower than the kitchen. I saw that the room had even adapted to this change, becoming taller, just leaving all the normal back porch on the bottom of the now taller room. I tried to get the business person to stop ranting by telling him, after I jumped down to the back porch, that acne no longer existed. The man looked bewildered by this and began to make his way up to the back porch to investigate further, but I closed the door before he could get through. I chose to forget about the strange businessmen and decided that I wanted to do something fun, so I made my way to the door out of the back porch. I opened the door to the dead night of the outdoors, but instead was met by a flying overview of a castle with blue flags, forcing me into a dream cutscene, taking my perspective as the flying overview of the castle. By the way, a dream cutscene being too small to be a phenomenon. Wait, no, it's not too small to be a phenomenon. I just didn't want to make it an entry on the Iceberg. Anyways, that concept can be explained here. A dream cutscene is an analogy I created myself, which describes an event that can take place in a dream when you are no longer in control of your body or perspective, and are forced to watch a sort of cutscene play, similar to a video game cutscene. This cutscene is also normally integral to the dream's plot. Anyways, as soon as I got control back over my body, I immediately shut the door because I had no interest in going to some random castle. Instead, I opened the door again, hoping that I would be let outside, and I was, as I walked outside. I walked to my mom's van, parked in the driveway, as I wondered how I would start it. I eventually decided to take the easy way out, as I formed the keys to the van inside my hand's grasp. After I got to the van, as I started to open the door, I came to the realization that I didn't need a van to go anywhere, or a car at all. I could fly after all. Keys on the ground, I walked in the street by my house as I fixed my eyes on my goal, which was the main street to McDonald's. For some reason, even though the original four-way to the main street that led to the McDonald's is what I was walking towards, in the dream, it was instead a T intersection, meaning an entire neighborhood and street that normally took place on the main road was reduced to what was left. And all that was left was a house extremely colored by bright Christmas lights and decorations, placed where the street normally would be. I walked towards my destination and began to run as I put my fist in front of me. I left off the ground and began to fly like Superman as I turned right at the overly decorated house, hoping to make it to McDonald's for a snack. As I turned though, I lost control, my vision quickly turning to black abyss, and I was experiencing a blackout. Since I don't want to make another entry in this already very long iceberg, I'll just explain what a blackout is right now. Kind of like how I just explained the, dream cutscene. A blackout for me in my dreams is another overpowering force, similar to that of a dream cutscene. What happens when a blackout occurs is the dreamer's vision slowly gets darker, yet darker, and if it's not dealt with correctly, then it can end up making the dreamer wake up or go to another dream. This effect happens to most lucid dreamers to my knowledge. It usually takes place when a dreamer does something exciting, most likely something they haven't done before, like flying, or when they start to become unfocused on their dream. A blackout usually means that the dreamer is lucky though, because most times this happens, they wake up or get teleported to another dream. So this is usually a dreamer's brain's way of saying that this is your last chance to get control of the dream. Anywho, I woke up, no longer flying, in a room that was some sort of black void. As I sat at a table, darkness closing in on me every second. I panicked, not knowing what to do to stop the blackout, and I didn't have much time either. Finally, I decided not to quit, but instead pull out my phone from my pocket and watch Explore Lucid Dreaming's How to Fix a Blackout video. After I did this, I thought of imagining myself in a room, surrounded by members from Shake It Up Made in Japan, and escaped from the blackout. I sat on a metal chair inside a small cement room, Japanese promotional posters all around the walls, and the 2 exit doors to the room being in front and behind me. A large Japanese businessman, the boss, and businessman from before both walked to one of the exits of the room, the one in front of me, the boss giving some sort of unknown instructions to a Japanese businesswoman before he walked out the door. The businesswoman started walking ominously towards me as the other 2 left. Not wanting any trouble, I telepathically hypnotized the woman into walking out the door with the other 2. I got out of the chair and walked to the other exit of the room, opened it, and left. I entered another small room which seemed to be a filler passway room, which was filled with about 20 cages containing several puppies who looked like they were held there against their own will. I walked out the exit to this new room, and right as I was about to close the door, I heard someone shout from behind me, "Hey, you're not supposed to be back here!" This new room I had entered was drastically different from the others, as it was incredibly clustered and dark as well. The room I was now in was a dark and cozy hallway, carpet lining the floor, and wall shelves containing several miscellaneous objects all along the room's edge. I soon noticed that there were many security guards in front of me in this room, all wearing fruit and vegetable themed costumes for kids. I didn't want to fight all of them, so I used hand movements to make most of them disappear, except one in a dinosaur costume. The one in a dino costume said that he quit his job just now, so I mercifully spared him. I continued to walk down the hallway, turning right, which led to an identical hallway that contained both of my sisters and a door to the right of the hallway. As I saw the door, I remember the trick where I could imagine a door of my choice's destination if done correctly. I opened the door to see what it originally led to, which looked like a room the size of Walmart, extremely cluttered with shelves full of miscellaneous items, the same lighting as the hallways. I closed the door, imagined a McDonald's behind it, and opened it back up, but to no avail. Apparently, because the door's frame was slightly broken, my mind decided the trick just simply wouldn't work on this door. Nice. Instead, I walked with my sisters back to where I entered this cluttered expanse, to the door that led to the room full of dogs. I imagined the McDonald's behind the door, my sisters around me, and opened the door, it now leading to the unhealthy fast food restaurant. I was led into the kitchen of the McDonald's upon entry, as my sisters sorta just disappeared after I entered the McDonald's, possibly because they didn't want to go there in the first place. Probably Chick-fil-A, TBH. I saw multiple workers in this white pristine hallway of the kitchen, making food and not caring about my presence. At the time in the dream, the workers were all working together in order to make a drink, specifically a sweet tea with no ice. I made my way through the kitchen and into the dining area of the restaurant through the service area where the workers would likely serve food from, as I slid through the opening and into the line for ordering. In line, and looking at the strangely arranged order selection screen, I saw my dad in front of me, somehow ordering at the place he absolutely despises. He told the cashier his order, but I got distracted by the menu's promotional ad for the McDonald's several flavors of ice cream. The one that caught my eye, of course, being chocolate. This ice cream ad then oddly took me into a full dream cutscene of the advertisement. The dream cutscene of the McDonald's ice cream ad was a bizarre one, to say the least. The scene showed a series of many different McDonald's ice cream flavors represented as crayons. Don't ask me why, I probably know just as much as you. The flavors red, yellow, blue, chocolate, and more. And for some reason, they were all superheroes, which was also oddly unexplained. By the end of the commercial, I had noticed that the chocolate flavor was no longer present and seemed to have been replaced with white vanilla. Then the commercial ended, and my consciousness was sent back to the McDonald's. Now that I was away from the dream cutscene, I noticed that the menu had changed, and the block of video originally advertising the commercial had been taken up by a jumble of unreadable orders, and most noticeably, a large picture of a taco, implying that you could get a taco at this particular McDonald's. I ordered my food, yet I don't remember ordering it, and all I remember is receiving my food after I figured out what I wanted. This has led to my own personal understanding that I ordered my meal telepathically, then sped up the time there was to make the food, and received my food with ease. If only McDonald's worked like this in the real world. I received my food right as my dad did, which is going to be about the last time we see him in this stream. So, bye! I walked over to the semicircle booth and decided that because I now had my food, I could complete my third and final goal of this lucid dream. Talk to a specific friend's sister who I had a bit of a crush on. Clip this. I attempted to summon in my friend's sister, but instead accidentally ended up summoning both my friend and her sister. I tried to usher my friend away so I could talk alone with her sister, but instead my friend's sister was the one who left the table to go to another. Flustered, I tried to make things right, and bring back my friend's sister and simultaneously usher away my friend. My friend eventually got the message, and rightfully so, she was a little annoyed at me. Anyways, I had finally managed to get me and my friend's sister alone, so we could have a conversation, but before we could say a word, I woke up. Pretty anticlimactic ending, right? Road trip. This stream is an absolute adventure, so buckle up. This is gonna be a sporadically weird one. I was with a group of people I had been assigned to take a road trip with. But first, we all had to watch a 5-minute long video about puppets explaining little kids' concepts. The puppets oddly looked like characters from the internet horror series Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, and once the video was over, the whole group complained about how long the video was, as we all thought the video felt like it was 5 hours long. I then got transported to a dream cutscene where one of my classmates, in a geometrically incorrect and dark environment, got some snacks from her mother because she was planned to go to a convention that day. Don't worry, that dream cutscene will be important later. I then sat in the truck, in the back right of it to be exact, where I could finally see the entirety of my road trip group, which was oddly inconsistent throughout the stream. In the front of the truck, there was an unknown older white girl who drove us, and in the passenger seat, there sat one of my grade's comical class clowns. In the back with me sat a little white girl and no one else as far as I could see. At some point, I noticed a sort of countdown timer next to the driver's door, which read in digital green numbers how much time we had left to drive. When I saw the timer, in the moment, it was 48 hours. We traveled for a good bit until a movie somehow started to play on the front windshield. The class clown in the passenger seat leaned into his door to try to get some rest, while I thought that I should stay awake to see what this movie was about. The movie that played took me to a dream cutscene, which presented me with a better view of the cinematography. The movie contains scenes where Thanos fought against a group of heroes, likely the Avengers, in huge spectacle fashion. At one point in the movie, Thanos charged up a blast of space stone energy at a large clockwork structure and fired it, causing the structure to collapse and explode! With a bloodied purple face, I noticed that Thanos sounded differently than he normally would, and he begun to give a short monologue before he appeared in front of the car. In front of the car, like a 3D hologram, Thanos gave a language-filled rant about some of the events that happened in the movie, using enough F-bombs to make the alphabet lore scared. Every time Thanos let out one of those nasty words, I shouted a, "Hey!" or "Whoa!" and attempted to shield the little girl's ears from the poor language. Once the movie ended, I looked over to the little girl and explained that we don't use that kind of language. And as I explained this, a new member of the crew, a white short girl in the front middle seat, looked back at me in confusion. Focused back on traveling, I noted to the crew that it was 12:30ish, close to lunchtime, so we should probably get some food to eat, even though we were in the middle of nowhere, emptiness and grass all around. The entire group shot down my offer though, because of the snacks we received earlier for the trip. See, I told you the dream cutscene would be useful later. Stumped, I continued to explain some necessary knowledge to my group, and said that if anyone needed to go to the bathroom, they should notify the driver up front, who was now revealed to be my older cousin. The little girl beside me only then decided to tell me that she had to go to the bathroom, and another new member of the crew, another one of my cousins, explained that it would be a good idea to stop to use the restroom because I, not him, had to go to the bathroom as well. Once we were out of the empty countryside, we found our ways into a small little town. In the town, we directly passed by a convenient gas station, which confused me because of our need for a bathroom. I told the driver to turn around, but after a transition, I wasn't inside the truck anymore. I was now in an enclosed building that had a meal being served for the members of the road trip. I was incredibly energetic upon becoming conscious, because I must have seen one of my friends a while up in the lines, specifically the friend that was implied to be at the picnic in the graveyard. I jumped up on the hand railing and ran to where I saw my friend, but I eventually ended up just coming back to where I started in the line. We decided to then get out of line and figure out what we wanted to eat. Cat Lover and I looked through one of the two options of food being served, the buffet, where there were high-quality pictures of each food being served about where it was being served. I remember that I saw a picture of a taquito on one of the pictures, but once I looked at the prices for everything, I told Cat Lover to go back where the rest of my family went. The second option for food, school lunch. This school lunch was some meat along with a cosmic brownie. The cosmic brownie was in a clear plastic bag, but it looked like the colorful chocolate chips on top had been shaken off. I looked around the counter where the food was being served, and I saw a pile of colorful chocolate chips lying in the open, almost like they had all fallen off the brownie and no-clipped through the bag onto the counter. My dad, for whatever reason, suggested that he could help out with cooking the meat, so the lady who was cooking it could take a break for lunch. The lady left, but my dad never helped out with the meat, and I noticed that the heat source for the meat, a powder in a white styrofoam cup, had started to be filled with water, overflowing. Suddenly, I was in a large and open toy store checkout area, and I was also with my group, along with my mom too. As we snuck out of the quiet area, I noticed that there were an absolute abundance of people who slept on the ground of the checkout area. As we silently walked, my mom apologized to our group and said something to the effect of, "Sorry for sleeping for 36 hours. I was preoccupied at the time though, making everyone know that I was disappointed that none of the people on the ground sleeping were people who I knew, because if they were, I'd be able to silently chastise them for sleeping. Suddenly, again, I was back in the truck with my road trip group, and we all celebrated because we were currently ahead of all of the other teams. Thinking about what we could do to keep the little girl entertained once we reached the finish line parking lot, I looked around the truck and realized that we had no Nintendo Switch nor a TV with us. See, told you the dream would be random, but it did seem to be at least a little cohesive, I guess. Picnic at the graveyard. In this dream, I was at one of my favorite arcade places, played games, and waited because for some reason there was a family gathering happening at this arcade place. Nobody was really around me at all during the dream, but it was implied that there were many aunts, uncles, and cousins all around the fun game place. I played air hockey by myself for the time that I was there, at least until my dad, who had just came back from working at one of his aunt's houses, approached me from the side. Once he got there, a transition showed that we drove down a gravel road, all in a long uniform line, like in a funeral procession, to a grassy and depressing landscape that looked similar to where I had recently went with my family to go for my great papa's funeral. When we got out of our cars and convened at the grassy area, I noticed that, even though this was supposed to be some family gathering, many of my classmates were present as well, such as one of my friends who was never shown in the dream but implied to be present. I suddenly sat at a white, long, fold-up table, and as mentioned by school boot camp, the table was much longer than it should have been. Someone sat to my left, a classmate, short white girl who I thought was cool, and to my right, an unknown white girl with black hair. I was happy I got to sit next to this classmate, as it gave me a perfect opportunity to talk with her. The classmate to my left looked over in my direction and said to the other girl who sat to my right, "Finally, I can sit next to you, Maggie." Sad because of how invisible I felt to my classmate, I looked across the table to one of my best friends to communicate my disappointment. I suddenly then realized that I was sitting at the far right end of the table, and everyone was extremely quiet. I saw some taco editions on the table in front of me, so I served myself, and eventually everyone's volume crescendoed back to normal. Apparently, a little black boy with black hair in front of me was praying the whole time everyone was silent, but I couldn't hear him. The boy's father congratulated him on his prayer, and the two started to eat their tacos very sloppily. They ate with their hands and seemed to have no need to be sanitary while eating, but probably needed plenty of napkins. I mean, at one point, the dad took a fistful of sour cream, slathered it on the outside of his taco shell, and ate it like a cookie. I decided to eat as well, which marked the end of what I thought was the dream. I woke up in my bed and remembered the dream easily, so I grabbed my notebook and pencil and headed to the bathroom to record my dream. While I was recording the dream I just had, inside this dream, I heard an argument going on outside of the bathroom between my parents. They argued about how my dad wasn't in the arcade, but also how my mom passive-aggressively texted my dad, beep boop, while he wasn't at the arcade to signify that she was playing epic games and he wasn't. At this moment, I then woke up again and realized that the recording I had just done was all actually just a dream. Graduation, worship, suicide pig, and the base room's holiday encounter. You see, this dream is an interesting one. Most of the events occurring in the dream seem like they should be in the other non-chapter entries, which is what I'm calling the full entries that take like a long time, at least a lot more than the smaller ones. But the thing is, although this doesn't really make any sense, after I had this dream, I had just this knowledge that all of these random, seemingly unconnected dreams were all actually a part of something greater. The first thing that happened in this dream was that I sat at a table with 3 older kids as we all reminisced about the end of school. I related to them in being sad that school would soon be over, even though all the older kids reminisced about the absolute end of school, the end of high school. And also, don't give me with that college crap answer, yeah, it's school, but it's also optional. I realized that I should probably leave, so I left the table and walked away towards a hallway. As I walked away, I spoke to a person beside me about a deep and sad thought I had about graduation as one of my classmates walked by me. And I said in revelation to this thought, I'm not even graduating, but I'm gonna cry. I then walked through the hallway into another room. This new room that I walked into looked slightly like the area before my church's sanctuary center, where I saw there was a row of chairs and a slightly curved but mainly horizontal line. The left side of the chairs contained my family, and the right contained my youth pastor, whose appearance is ever so similar to the popular image of Jesus, and his family, and neither family left any room between themselves. At this time, I started to notice that there was a worship song playing in the background of this room, and I started to sing the lyrics to it to myself, even though I didn't even know the song. I walked closer to the chairs, not particularly thinking there would be enough space for me to sit amongst the 2 families, but once I got close enough to the chairs, they changed their numbers to have 2 extra chairs in between my family and the youth pastors. Before I could sit down, I was taken away by my mind to the next portion of the dream. I then sat in front of our TV in our living room as I played a game on the Nintendo Switch, televised to my family who sat on the couches behind me. The living room was dark, and I soon noticed that the next cutscene of the game would be frightening and disturbing, so I attempted to press the home button on the remote I was using, but to no avail. I tried to make sure that the remote still worked by mashing several buttons on the remote, and even functions like the screen capture button worked, meaning that I was being kept out of exiting the game specifically. While I frantically tried to exit the game, the cutscene played. The cutscene showed a distorted version of the Peppa Pig show, as Peppa and her brother stood in an open and empty field, and got approached by their father. As the father presented himself on screen, in the background, a cloud passed right by the daddy pig, the only word on it reading, suicide. This word connected what was occurring in the cutscene to a popular Disney creepypasta, Suicide Mouse. Don't look that up, please. There was then a close-up on the daddy pig's face, revealing a horror of disgustingly unnatural facial features, eye misplacement terror, among many other things, which made me try to turn off the game even further. I decided to try my last option of turning the game's attention away from its current audience, taking out the Switch from the console. I did just that, but somehow the cutscene continued to play. My dad acknowledged the cutscene finally, as I saw out of the corner of my eye on the TV a large rat among the pigs, blob-like in shape and white with old, also white hair. The rat looked oddly different from the goofy art style of Peppa Pig, almost like it was more realistic, but somehow it terrifyingly and deceitfully fit right in. I was hopeless to stop the cutscene, but once again, I was taken to a different place by my mind. I gained consciousness again, but this time in my basement, or at least a variant of my basement. Yep, that's right, I was in the base rooms again. The rooms were different, probably because of the whole randomly generated thing, but the rooms had the same feel to them as they originally had in the base rooms GERT. The rooms were mainly dim, and just like last time, sometimes contained a basement-y item. The thing that separated this visit to the base rooms and my original visit was what happened very shortly after I started exploring. In the original base room stream, I explored miles more than I ever did in this stream, because in this stream, I stumbled across something interesting sooner than usual. Eventually, I came across a room that had a large Santa decoration at the entrance to it, and eventually more Christmas decorations throughout the room. The room itself was even longer than most other rooms I had already explored. I walked through the room with ease and ended up on pristine cement. The cement led to a large glass platform, with a fitting glass dome around it, Christmas decorations inside, and all up in the clouds. Without any warning, someone came through a secret window entrance of the glass dome, that person being my friend's mom. The specific friend being the one that was implied to be at the Dreams road trip and picnic at the graveyard. I ran over to this mom right as she entered, and oddly just jumped into her arms. This mother carried me back to where she entered the room from, as I oddly just thanked her for giving birth to my friend. Or, to put it in better terms, I thanked her for raising my friend to be how she is now. Well, that was kind of an anticlimactic ending, wasn't it? We didn't even get any closure on why these dreams were connected to each other. Aw, man. Layer 3. Now we're truly getting into the murky waters. Layer 3 is nothing short of bizarre, strange, and starting to slightly tiptoe on the edge of disturbing obscurity. Layer 3 has strange entries, weird entries, and just unsettling entries. So without further ado, let's dive into Layer 3. Role reversal. This dream was nothing short of weird, bizarre, and disturbing. In this dream, I was just lying in my bed in my old bedroom, even though I was sleeping in my current bedroom when this dream happened. It was night, but no fans were on in the hallway, and for a split second, out of the corner of my eye, I saw my second dog, Chase, walk past my doorway down the hall. Chase wasn't supposed to be upstairs, so I sat up and yelled to the mutt, "Chase, kennel!" Unexpectedly, after I demanded Chase to go to his kennel, he walked into my room. I don't remember if Chase was walking on all fours when he approached my bed, or with two legs like a person. In any case, I was just confused and scared. Chase, who was now at the foot of my bed, then yelled at me on repeat, "Stuffy cat, kennel! Stuffy cat, kennel! Stuffy cat, kennel! Stuffy cat, kennel! Stuffy cat, kennel!" Afraid, I'd laid back down in my bed and pulled my covers close, confused and not knowing how to respond. Cave End Biome. In this dream, I found myself in a large, dark, empty, but cramped Minecraft cave. The cave was very large width-wise, and the height, on the other hand, was about 5 or 6 blocks high. During the dream, I was running away from something. I ran through a cramped but sparse stone cave until I reached a different and interesting biome. I knew that the area I entered was a biome, although it oddly felt like the end. The biome I ran through was floored with endstone and had a sort of end portal frame spore blossom flower hybrids scattered about, but the flowers were right side up. That's all I remember, other than the fact that this dream could possibly be tied to a very Minecraft vacation, but I'm not sure with that last part. Ah, Huggy Wuggy! All that happened in this dream was me trying to keep my cool as I was attacked by a small, blue Huggy Wuggy biting my arm. It gnashed its teeth at me, like an imitation of the jump scare, and all I did was try to act like it wasn't an issue and prove that he wasn't actually scary. What is done in secret. In this dream, I was in the laundry room with the lights off, supposedly right after I got done with my tasks in the bathroom before going to bed. At that moment, I also thought my parents were upstairs already, and I was the only one downstairs. I had my phone in my hand, full volume, with no earbuds or headphones, and I listened to a well-made personal dream Iceberg that was actually not made by Midnight Krick somehow. I was also implied to be listening to this video past my bedtime, and in secret, behind my parents' backs. As I peeked through the slightly open door to the kitchen, light peeking through the crack, I saw my mom just outside the door on her phone, not even noticing that I was still there. This caused me to panic because, obviously, if I was listening to the video in secret, I didn't want to get caught in the act of doing things behind my parents' backs. I immediately tried to turn down the volume of my video all the way, but it didn't work. Knowing the loud video would eventually be heard by my mom, I reactively backed further and further into the corner of the room until I was in the closet. I had no idea what to do and tried anything to turn down the volume of my irresponsibility. Clicking off the phone, turning down the video, but nothing worked. At some point in my panicking, for whatever reason, the first chair trumpet from my school band quickly walked in and out of the laundry room for a reason that's beyond me. Eventually, through my panicking, I realized that I could just turn off the phone. So right after the red off button popped up on the screen of my loud phone, I pressed it. A new Springfield. In this dream, I found myself in a room along with Homer Simpson, even though he was never seen in the dream, only implied to be there. It wasn't clear in the dream, but I might have also been in this room with some unseen person who spoke to Homer throughout the dream, or maybe I was just the one speaking. The room we were in had a door in it, across from me, that led to the space above some sort of trans-universal highway. Beside the door's frame, I noticed a little mailbox flag-like arrow that pointed to the doorway itself, and beside the arrow read, Springfield. Under the arrow, I noticed a comment written by Homer, who supposedly also drew the arrow and label, that read, "Wow, I can't believe you got my reference. Homer." Beside this, there was also a little drawing of a mailbox. When I saw this in the dream, I genuinely thought it was one of the most clever and hilarious things ever, but now I just don't get it. At some point, someone said something, directed at Homer in the midst of the tense silence. "With your reckless driving, the one threat to all of us is you." Despite being a comedic and not very serious character by nature, Homer wasn't portrayed as this in my dream. Whenever I talked about Homer, or even just thought about him, I saw him more as this all-powerful threat, rather than a weirdo yellow cartoon dad. I felt like Homer could do a lot worse than just what he was caught for, which, as described before, was speeding. To compare this feeling to something similar, think about if Thanos, with all 6 Infinity Stones, was fined for littering. Yeah, I guess Homer is much more of a threat than we might have all once thought before. A valley of conflict. In this dream, I was walking alongside 2 other guys in a vast bowl-shaped valley, but I didn't feel like I was visible to them. I felt more like a cameraman. The 2 guys walked off trail and into the pure Grand Canyon-like ground of the canyon, but with orange specks all over the ground. They walked into a more open area of the canyon where most of the orange specks were absent, and one of the 2, a young white man with a brown mustache and beard, continued to walk over to the edge of the speckless ground. The other man followed, and the bearded man had begun to take 2 orange specks off of the ground, then explaining to the other man that he liked to pretend that the specks were dating, as he made the specks go close to each other, then go away, together, and then apart. After this was stated, it was clear that the other man's outlook on the bearded man had completely changed, from seeing him as a villain to something different. In the background, I noticed a sort of village, which seemed like the dream implying that it would be explored in greater detail in the story, which apparently was not the case because I never got to see what the village was about. Suddenly, in a different scene, I was a substantial character to the story's plot, speaking to a white girl character. We were inside a specific part of the canyon where a large chunk of sphere-shaped rock was missing, and I'm pretty sure the girl was flying, or at least floating. I explained to the girl that we needed to be more careful in the canyon, but she immediately pointed out how the work I already did had led to the cracks, pointing to the cracks on the ground I stood on. Now, you may be wondering why we needed to be careful in this canyon, and, well, remember how the canyon is bowl-shaped and has a village in it? Well, let's just say that if there were enough cracks in the canyon, it could be completely flooded with water. Anyways, with that context out of the way, randomly, the girl decided to break the ground where all the cracks were, so if there was any water, the canyon would, in fact, be flooded. Pizza party. In this dream, I remember being in our kitchen, darkness looming from outside the windows, implying that it was night. As implied from the title of the dream, we were having pizza, and before I selected my pizza, I saw a dream cutscene about my mom describing how excited she was about the special pizza we were having that night and how it could be perfect. While my mom talked about the pizza, there was a zoom in on the pizza itself, which presented the pizza as a pool of sauce contained by crust, with singular pieces of shredded mozzarella cheese floating in the pool. My dad was in the kitchen with my mom and I now, my mom still explaining what the pizza was. I grabbed a plate and quickly went over to the stovetop to grab my pizza. Once I got to the stove, I noticed that there was only one pizza, a cheesy pizza, but the cheese was unevenly spread, blotches of white, stringy mozzarella cheese all over the plane of sauce. As I took one of the slices, I remember worrying that my dad or someone else would eat all of the pizza, leaving none left for me, so I felt good that I had snagged a piece before anyone else. After I selected my pizza, I stepped back from the stovetop, picked up my slice of pizza with my left hand, and took a bite. I could see my dad in my peripheral vision as I ate the pizza, and I soon noticed that the crust of the pizza had the consistency of baby food, which caused me to name the pizza Baby Food Pizza. Race spray. In this dream, I was in some sort of passing area that was also kind of a living room. My dad and one of his white coworker pals that was about half my dad's height were also in the room in front of me. My dad held a sort of spray paint can full of black paint, and at one point in the dream, he sprayed the paint onto his face. Just his face. His friend followed in suit to my dad, and I started to realize something strange. After spraying their faces with a can of black paint, my dad and his friends' faces had turned to the color black. Racially. My dad's face looked exactly the same as Shaquille O'Neal's, and his friend's face looked similar to that of Kevin Hart. That's it. And I don't want to see anything in the comments about how this dream makes me racist! Sans vs. Mario and Orange Milk. In this dream, I was playing some video game, getting ready to fight a boss. The boss arena was nice and 3D looking, but all of the characters were 2D sprites, so to make up for this, the game made the ground of the 3D arena a background for the game and the 2D sprites faced toward the camera, letting the camera have a sort of top-down view. The character I was playing as in the dream was the original overworld Saiyan sprite from Undertale, but his 3 sections were colored pink, yellow, and purple. As I entered the boss arena, I was met with a character approaching screen, which presented the boss I was going up against. The screen showed the paired boss that I was going up against next, Mario and a sentient orange milk carton. I approached these bosses, ready to fight, and they begun to use a number of projectile attacks. During the first half of the fight, I was badly beaten by the boss's frequent and hard-to-dodge projectile attacks, and supposedly took a lot of damage. There was a turning point in the battle, though, where I started to win, because I used my skinny gaster blasters to attack the bosses. Turning the tides of the battle, I dodged the bosses' attacks by jumping over them, and even the very bosses themselves. I'm not sure if I won or not. You see, without context, this stream seems very random and out of place, but with context, it would make much more sense. The night before I had the stream, I played the Sans Genocide fight right up until I went to bed. That night, I also just finished watching Underverse 0.7, where Fresh Sans had a pretty big role in. I also watched a YouTube short that night about an animated boy trying to buy an orange milk carton at a store, but every time it got scanned, it transformed into an orange container for the boy to pay for. See? Now the dream makes a little bit more sense, right? Bruce Banner encounter. In this dream, I was standing in my backyard in front of the tree closest to our house, talking to Bruce Banner. Realistically, I was actually talking to Mark Ruffalo, but in the dream, he was not seen as an actor. He was seen as the real, fictional character. Randomly, Bruce approached me, and seemed interested in my channel. He asked me what my channel was, in which I replied, Stuffy Cat, and in response to my answer, Banner started asking multiple questions to me about how he could subscribe, support, and be a great fan for my channel. This dream was interesting because, unlike another future dream, where I met one of my favorite Marvel characters, Bruce Banner is barely even close to a favorite character of mine. Like, not even top 5. Zombie apocalypse phenomenon. Less occurring phenomenon here, but whenever it happens, it's almost always a banger dream. Oftentimes, I will have zombie apocalypse dreams, which I guess is just my brain's way of cheaply making the environment I explore barren and empty. Even just the fact that this phenomenon is named the zombie apocalypse phenomenon is pretty ironic because, in actuality, no zombie apocalypse dream I've ever had has actually shown any zombies. Because of this, the zombie apocalypse phenomenon basically consists of me walking around empty areas of either large empty cities, small empty suburbs, and in some cases, my empty hometown streets. I will usually be alone in these dreams, and there will also typically be no explanation as to why I am where I am, why I'm alone, or why the zombie apocalypse happened in the first place. One zombie apocalypse dream I remember having was one where I tried to catch up to my family's RV so I wouldn't be left behind as they drove away from our house. I ran after them until I eventually caught up to where they ended up, a nice little campsite of survivors. Another zombie apocalypse dream I remember is one where I was alone, trying to hide from an imminent threat in a large empty city. I ran around trying to find a place to hide, until I decided to hide in a porta potty in the middle of a large empty block in the city. Also, apparently the imminent threat I was trying to hide from in the dream was implied to be a nuclear bomb! So yeah, zombie apocalypse dreams are always interesting. Random thoughts in the night phenomenon. The random thoughts in the night phenomenon is also quite self-explanatory, but nonetheless pretty interesting. The random thoughts in the night phenomenon consists of situations where, after waking up from a slumber, random varying thoughts come out of nowhere from the recesses of my mind to take center stage of my attention. These thoughts can vary by randomness incredibly, from random songs that start playing in the background of my mind, to ideas for videos, to random concepts I've pondered before. The randomness is inevitable. Some examples of random thoughts I've had in the night, or songs that have started playing in my head after I woke up, are as follows. Popular songs that play in the background of many YouTube shorts, YouTuber Jerichode's explanation on how song that might play when you fight Sans wouldn't work in the Genocide run, the Undertale OST's battle against a true hero, an idea for an extended collection where I would just talk about one fun fact of each one of my plushes due to me thinking of my unofficial Kamek plush, the Undertale OST's Last Goodbye but with constant cymbal clashes like the Undertale 5th Anniversary Concert, Dial Tone by Toby Fox, the End of the Last Breath Sans Phase 1 theme, and probably more that I just forgot about. Not much to say about this phenomenon, but it's mainly just random, weird, and kinda confusing, but has also given me ideas for possible future videos. False awakening phenomenon. The false awakening phenomenon, while being a phenomenon, has actually only happened a few times. The false awakening phenomenon occurs whenever I wake up from a dream into what I think is reality, but in actuality, it's just another dream. As spoken about before in Layer 2, the dream inside a dream phenomenon can easily lead to the false awakening phenomenon. But it's a sure fact that false awakenings are more confusing and lead more into the real world than dream inside a dream dreams. Most of the time, whenever a false awakening occurs, I wake up in an area that would make sense for me to believe is the real world, like in my bed at night and so on. Other times though, I'll wake up into a scenario that makes no sense to wake up into, but I believe I just woke up regardless. Sometimes I've even just had fully false awakening dreams, where there is no dream I just woke up from, and have just been lulled into the reality that I've woken up from my slumber, even though that is not the case. Overall, whenever the false awakening phenomenon occurs, the fact that I woke up makes me see the false awakening dream as more real than it normally would seem, and that can definitely lead to some rude and even sometimes cruel turns of events in a dream. A very Minecraft vacation. In this dream, my family and I were on vacation, yet I don't know exactly where we went on this vacation. I was in a cube-like store with my dad to start out the dream. Many shelves full of official Minecraft plushes filled the store's area. The plushies were very interesting, mainly because of how creative their designs were. The plushes being sold all throughout the store weren't just plain old mobs, but instead were interesting and fun renditions on a mob's design. For example, one of these mob plushes I remember seeing in the store was a slime plush, but vertically stretched out and tall, a callback to the slime's jumping animation, complete with a slime ball in its hand. Although the slime plush was pretty good, the plush that really got me hyped for the merchandise's creativity was a plush bee with leather boots on. The plush was amazing and adorable all at the same time, and had to be the plush I most wanted to get from the store. I limited myself to selecting only 4 plushes from the store's grand selection, the first plush obviously being the leather boots bee plush. The thing is, anytime I came to a shelf and selected a plush that I wanted, there would normally be an elderly couple who stared at me with their judgmental eyes. Unfortunately, this judgment was well deserved, because even though I limited myself to only selecting 4 plushes and the plushes were average size, each plush in the store costed $24. After I had selected my 4 plushes in my bag, my dad and I exited the store because apparently the purchasing part of the store was actually in a completely different building across the parking lot. My dad and I walked across the parking lot in the general direction of the building, my dad ahead of me so much that eventually he was already up next to someone's car, seemingly talking about the car with its owner, and I was trying to catch up. Out of nowhere, I noticed an ominous car pull up next to where I was walking. The car's passenger window was already open, and a man's arm and head crept out of the window, the hand holding a toy-like gun. I took this as a threat and ended up jumping all the way over to where my dad was talking to the person about their car, and that was a while away. Apparently, just as I jumped to where my dad was, the gravity affecting me got turned down a bunch, and I ended up jumping 20 or so feet in the air. On my descent over to my dad, I warned him about the suspicious man with a gun, and told him to do his thing. As I landed next to my dad with his real gun out, I noticed that the man from the car was now out of the car and ominously walking towards us. My dad understood the situation and did the only reasonable thing. He shot the guy multiple times in the chest. I saw the bloody gunshot wounds on the guy's chest and was thankful that whatever the man planned on doing to us would not happen anymore. The man, though, realistically should have been on the ground by that point, but he still stood in front of us. He slowly raised his toy gun, aimed it, and pulled the trigger multiple times as well, letting out a toy-like clicking sound each time it was pulled. I looked down to my chest after that and noticed that I now had the wounds. Suddenly, I was right outside of my family's van, my family inside, all contributing to a strange atmosphere. As I entered the van, my movement and self was very strange, as I actually floated into the van, almost like I was a ghost. As I got into the van, I uttered a few dramatic last words, even though the last words were only meant to guilt-trip my family into buying me the plushes that I chose from the store. Bruh. This guilt-tripping attempt made no sense though, because according to the rules of the dream, the hospital would have paid for the plushes anyways. I don't even remember being inside or leaving the hospital though, and all I remember afterward was me apologizing to my family on our way back from vacation. I apologized to my family for making the vacation experience one day longer than normal, and how we would miss cheese sandwich day because of that. Suddenly, I was walking with my dad along a sort of line between two areas, a blacked out nether biome on my left and a mall waiting area on my right. I was shirtless, probably because of my bullet scars, which had healed up into bullet-shaped bumps on my chest where the wounds were. As we walked through, I acknowledged how cool it would be to tell my friends back at school that I had been shot multiple times and survived, as I'd guess any high schooler would. As I walked by, a man from the mall waiting portion of the area asked me, "How'd you get those bullet wounds?" As I continued walking, I regretted not answering the man, but returned my attention to the strange nether biome on my left. I mean, I'd regret giving up the chance to unironically say, "You wanna know how I got these scars?" too, so yeah. Anyways, the nether biome was very interesting because of how it was pitch black and filled with the hauntings of Endermen throughout. In the top left part of my vision, I could even notice a white text that read the name of the biome I was so focused on. The text either read Enderman biome or lots of Enderman biome, and that would make sense because there were tons of Endermen there. At one point, I saw a haunting of Endermen containing about 40 Endermen, all clumped up into one spot. I remarked, after examining the biome, that it would be a good place to come back to in order for me to get some ender pearls to fight and defeat the ender dragon. Layer 4. This is where stuff starts to get real. A lot of the fun and games are starting to fade away, and the water is getting much more darker. The shadowy ice is the only thing that's illuminating the surroundings. There are much more disturbing concepts in Layer 4. Yet it seems as if it's almost contained. Layer 4 is when you can't see the light at the surface of the water anymore, and all you can see is the darkness that looms below and the iceberg that is in front. Without further ado, let us venture to Layer 4. Facial manipulation. I remember having this dream a long time ago, and I mean long ago. It was long enough ago that my mom and dad were still sleeping in their original room, which changed my room and is currently, at the time of writing this, my sister's room. It was when I was probably around 6 or something, but I remember it going just something like this. Just know that there will probably and most likely not be any crazy descriptions for this dream because of how long ago it happened. I remember gaining consciousness while I was sitting on the edge of my parents' bed in their room. I looked out towards the window that had been closed up by the dark curtains. It appeared to be night at the time, and I don't know why I was in the room. I don't even remember them talking or any type of conversation going on in the background. But who knows, maybe it's just a bad memory. I remember looking over to the air conditioner that was placed next to the window. I knew that I was never supposed to touch the air conditioner, but for no particular reason, I did just that in this dream. I remember pushing buttons and turning knobs on the strange device that I didn't understand. For some reason, I decided to turn around to face my parents afterwards, most likely because I knew that I was doing something wrong. To my horror, though, my parents' faces had become disfigured, strangely colored, and looked alien in comparison to their normal appearances. This horrified me to the extent of no return. I knew that messing with the air conditioner was bad, but I had no idea that it would have this outcome. The scary thing is that even though my parents' faces were completely distorted and different beyond comparison, it didn't seem to bother them. Who knows, maybe they just didn't notice it yet. I don't know. Panicking in terror, I looked back at the controls of the air conditioner, thinking that maybe I could fix my mistake without my parents noticing. I noticed that the main thing that was changing their faces was the knob, so I turned the knob more, knowing that their faces were changing color, shape, and other attributes in the background. I finally stopped to see if it had worked, but when I looked around to see my parents again, I was overcome with terrifying disappointment. What would my parents do when they found out about their facial contortion? What would I do? Endless purple. For context, at this point in my life, I was very young. This was also the time after I watched the Despicable Me 2 movie with my mom in theaters. This was the time when she and I would frequently go on quote-unquote dates, or mainly hanging out times, getting hot cocoa, or even sometimes watching movies like Frozen or Despicable Me 2. Now, she had good intentions. The first movie was epic and unforgettable, so of course both of us thought that it would be an awesome experience. But sadly, it wasn't. I don't know why, but the idea of the purple virus thing introduced in the movie, making cute and funny things like bunnies and minions into horrific monsters, rubbed me in the wrong way, which was especially seen in the scene where the main villain of the movie was about to take the serum. My imagination ran wild at the possibilities of what could happen to a person when taking the serum, so I hid my face in my mother's lap from the impending amalgamation. Needless to say, I was scared by Despicable Me 2, and that fact will greatly help in the understanding of this dream. In this dream, I was walking down the halls of my elementary school towards the gym, seemingly for an assembly that was going to or was taking place, all alone. I entered the gym, and my classmates were sitting casually on the ground of the gym, waiting for the assembly to start, not even noticing me. I sat down and waited with them. At this moment, I noticed that there were multiple TVs along the walls of the gym, unlike normal. Suddenly, without any warning, all of the TVs started playing none other than Despicable Me 2. Panicked, I tried to look away from the TVs, but now every space on the walls had been covered by the TVs playing the same thing. I tried to look away again to the ground I was sitting on, but the ground itself turned to clear glass, and below the glass were, you guessed it, more TVs playing Despicable Me 2. I didn't know what was happening, and I was scared, so I did the last thing I could think of, closing my eyes. But not even closing my eyes could shield me from the fears of the movie, because soon enough, the back of my eyelids themselves began to present Despicable Me 2. I couldn't escape. I was trapped in my own fear. That's all I remember. Be quiet. In this dream, I was in the living room of my house. I sat on the floor in front of my mom, who was folding laundry on the couch. I tried to call out to her, but I could barely muster a sound. Next thing I knew, either a bee started getting bigger and bigger as it slowly flew towards me, or I just heard the sound of a bee's buzzing getting louder and louder in my ears, or both. Either way, I don't like stinging bugs, so I tried to call out for my mom once more, but my voice was again drowned out by some unknown force. I yelled and yelled to my mom, but nothing came out. The sound of the bees humming got louder and louder every second as I desperately tried to scream for my mother to notice my situation. She never even noticed me or the bee. Maybe there was no bee. Voices. This is something that would sometimes happen to me as I was trying to fall asleep when I was younger. I only remember it happening back then, and thankfully it has stopped since. Around this age, when I would try to fall asleep, for some reason, I remember hearing random voices in my head yelling my name or telling me that I needed to do something. These voices would normally seem reminiscent of my mother's voice, oddly enough, but would sometimes be voices that I hadn't heard before. Recently, I found out that one of the symptoms of schizophrenia is hearing voices in your head, so I guess you could say that I had short-term momentary childhood schizophrenia, but that's probably a stretch. Looking back on it now, though, this was disturbing as heck. Slender Man encounter. This dream started with me walking down the street to my house, toward the street that leads out of Dreamtown, or to McDonald's. My little sister was playing over at our house's playground, and it was bright, but shadowy outside. As I walked to the street, though, I noticed, quite a bit away from me, Slender Man on my right. A piano version of the Slender Man appear sound effect played, effectively altering the dream's tone from happy-go-lucky to alien fear. I walked a little closer to the suited creature to find out if it noticed me or not, and I soon realized that it did indeed notice me, and it was coming to attack me. As I faced it, the horrible shapes of the monster were fully revealed to me. Looking exactly as he would look, Slender Man had a pale white face, black fancy suit, and even a set of disgusting arm-like tentacles coming from behind it. There was definitely something odd about Slender Man, though, as he also had a little white man dressed in a suit who sat on his right shoulder. I don't remember if he was alive or not. I turned around and ran to the yard, Slender Man close behind, but I didn't stay running. I turned around as soon as I got to the yard, faced Slender Man, who was floating towards me in all of his horror, and shouted at him, "I'm not even scared of you! The only thing I'm scared of is the urchin from Mario 64! I must have been trying to somehow change the actions of Slender Man in the dream, because I'm not scared of the urchin from Mario 64. And there is no urchin from Mario 64. I quickly turned around again and ran to the front of my house through the side yard to get further away from Slender Man. As I was running, I looked to my right and witnessed a large urchin statue get thrown to the left of where I was running, which unironically did fill me with a good amount of fear. Still trying to find a way to escape Slender Man, I soon noticed a van on the opposite side of the street from me, just a block away, and started to head for it. I leaped for the van, but the gravity of my jump severely lowered, which caused my jump to be further than it would have been, but slower than it would have normally been as well. As I slowly floated my way through the air towards the van, I started uncontrollably spinning, so fast that all I could see was the van and a shadowy figure where Slender Man would have been. Although, each time I made a full spin in the air, the shadowy figure got closer and closer to me. Knowing that there was almost no escape from Slender Man now, I had almost no escape from him, I opened my eyes. I had heard my dad calling my name, and so I woke up in my bed. My left eye opened and examined my surroundings as the dream slowly fell away from my consciousness. My right eye refused to open, though, due to an extremely rare subphenomenon known as dream lag. Dream lag is a phenomenon where one or both of your eyes either refuse to open after having a dream, or refuse to stay open because of you being extremely tired. Anyways, yeah, my right eye was suffering from a bit of dream lag, but at that point, I'm not even sure if that part of everything was actually real, or if it was all just a false awakening. Papa's summer sausage livers. In this dream, all I remember doing was sitting at the kitchen at my Nana and Papa's house. The only ones in the house were me, my Papa, and one of my uncles, and possibly some family, but my Papa and I were at the table. My Papa stood in front of me instead of sitting next to me at the table, and also had a fairly large summer sausage in his hand. He asked me if I wanted any. I felt pressured into saying yes for some reason, so I said yes. My Papa now wielded a large knife and cut the summer sausage into sliver-like slices, which were very randomly and strangely cut, almost like he wasn't focusing on cutting at all. He just kept on asking me if I wanted more, and I kept saying yes. Man, the way he would just stare at me after he asked. It was almost like he knew what I needed to say, and that feeling, it was unshakable. Luigi Fan Quado 1's final video. In this dream, I only remember a tiny bit of a video I was watching, the video being presented to me in a dream cutscene format. The only thing I remember being in the video was a sort of final fight between Citron and Gargantuar, The fight consisted of the two plushes being propelled against each other midair until the citron eventually prevailed. The reason this dream stuck out so much to me was because the video I watched in the dream held very similar vibes to Technoblade's So Long Nerds video. This was so prevalent that even in the dream itself, the video caused me to remember and think about Technoblade's unfortunate and depressing death. But that's all I remember. Did Luigi Fan die in this dream's universe? Was this Luigi Fan's last recorded video? I don't know. Out of control car. This dream started with me exiting an unknown building into a grassy parking lot. I walked to the van to retrieve something. Standing in the middle part of the van, both of the side doors opened, I looked for whatever I was looking for. Suddenly, the van started to roll backwards with me in it, supposedly because of my weight in the van, which was actually, for some reason, in drive. I only noticed this at the last second and quickly tried to put the van in park. I succeeded in putting the van in park, but it didn't matter because the van had still hit a green car that was parked far behind us. The impact from the collision broke a small, bullet-like hole in the glass with small cracks near it. As I thought about how weird it was that the van was still in drive in the parking lot, the van turned back into drive and started accelerating to the right. I noticed this again and quickly went to put the van in park again. By now, my family had arrived at the van and were wondering what the heck was going on. I tried to explain my situation, but they couldn't understand, so they jumped in the van with me, which placed me in the driver's seat. Once the doors were closed, the van switched back into drive again and started accelerating, but this time towards the highway. I noticed that the van had drove into the yellow dotted lines on the grass that were for a turning lane and immediately started panicking, as we could hit a car trying to merge into the lane. Eventually, I pulled up my big boy pants and made a decision to steer the car onto the highway. Why try to stop the inevitable, right? Now on a 2-lane opposite traffic highway, I tried desperately to stop the van from veering out of our lane and hitting an oncoming car. It was horrible, hectic, and a nightmare. I ended up dodging my own death from the out-of-control car multiple different times. At some point on the road, though, I noticed a strange-looking military-almost truck, which, for whatever reason, caused me to realize that I was dreaming. Then I woke up. One man's water park, another man's state crossroad. Not much happened in this dream. All that happened was just my family and some family from Kansas driving to and arriving at some water park. The water park was pretty normal at first, but when we got to the lowest part of the water park, my mother pointed out something really interesting. As we walked through across the light blue floor coated with about an inch of water all around, my mother remarked that the water park was actually built in 2 different state borders, kinda like the Four Corners exhibit. As we likely walked past state borders, something occurred to me. Maybe it was the circumstances, maybe it was the water park, or maybe it was the concept of going across state borders. But as I walked through that part of the water park, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been here before. I knew I was experiencing massive dream deja vu, and I didn't know why I thought I had been there before, but I knew that I had been there before, somehow. Dire Docks. In this dream, I was in a video game, specifically some sort of Mario game where the goal was to collect stars placed around the map. I walked around and looked for stars, collecting them through little challenges. All of the challenge rooms were connected to a claustrophobic, strangely shaped hub room that was dark and coated with light beige carpet all around the floor and walls. For some reason, though, the way I had to collect these stars were in unnecessarily not so great means. I don't remember exactly how I collected the stars in the dream, but I did know that the way in which I had collected them was wrong, which gave me similar vibes to that of playing the Undertale Genocide run. At some point, I decided to restart the game, which brought me to the main hub of the world, where about 20 stars were just scattered about, carelessly on the floor. Seeing the stars lying on the floor of the main hub world of the game, it shook me with a chilling horror of what I had done. This did not give me a good feeling, so I decided to try to explore a room that I had never explored in my original playthrough of the game. As I entered the mysterious level, I even heard voices from nowhere in particular pointing out how I had never went in this room before. The room was named Dire Docks, yet it looked more like the Puffy Urchin Challenge place in Monsters University, but a bit brighter. In this empty parking garage-like room, there were people who I knew, sitting at white fold-up tables, waiting. I decided to sit at one of the tables, grabbing a seat next to an acquaintance of mine. After hearing some noise from behind me, I noticed that a youth pastor from college had also arrived, and even later, another one of my friends arrived. We continued to wait, but the thing is, I have no idea what we were waiting for. Spiral backrooms. For context, one thing I've wanted to do for a while in my dreams is going to the backrooms, and in this dream, as implied by the title, I actually do that. Kinda. In this dream, I exited an elevator to enter level 0 of the backrooms, alongside multiple other people. We all ran out of this elevator instantly, trying to explore the place first. While I explored, I soon realized that this backrooms was oddly unlike the actual backrooms. It's dimly lit rooms that spiral path or circular layout, meaning that if you went straight, you would just be going in circles. An abundance of cardboard boxes and furniture scattered around the floor of level 0 caused me to realize that this wasn't any normal backrooms. Soon enough, I decided to go back to the elevator and travel to the next layer. I very parkourly leaped out of the moving elevator while the doors opened right after we got into the next layer and landed on the next level, looking almost exactly like the first, but smaller in size. Soon enough, I made it out of the spiral completely and stood at the bottom of it, seeing that the whole structure is a downward spiral, rooms being smaller and smaller and smaller until it was barely anything at all. While I was here, for some reason, I remember seeing one of my fellow flute acquaintances. That's it. Emotion overflow phenomenon. The emotion overflow phenomenon is a phenomenon that occurs whenever I wake up from a very emotional dream, and the emotions I was experiencing in the dream travel back to the waking world. The most common example of this phenomenon would be shown in nightmares, as I will typically wake up afraid after a nightmare. Like, for example, if I just had a nightmare where a giant spider was chasing me, and then I wake up, I'm going to wake up scared. This phenomenon can also be seen in dreams that cause me to be thankful and happy upon waking up, like in the later dream, love, and also in some adventure-like dreams. I can also feel very sad upon waking up from a dream. The dream I felt most sad upon waking up from would have to be a new little sister dream, which will also be seen later in the Iceberg. Other dreams like unsuccessful captor and the such will cause me to feel intense anxiety, stress, and worry, even after waking up from the dream. Dream deja vu phenomenon. The dream deja vu phenomenon, or possibly deja deva phenomenon, is a phenomenon that occurs when I feel great deja vu while inside a dream, feeling like or knowing that I've been in a certain circumstance or place before. This phenomenon only really occurs in one man's water park, another man's state crossroad, and the base room skirt. When this phenomenon happens, though, I remember memories from past dreams and acknowledge that I've had the experience before, possibly even getting a little existential for the moment, but I usually move on from that. This phenomenon can vary from vaguely thinking I've been in a certain circumstance before to knowing that I've been in a certain dream or circumstance before. Does this mean that all of my dreams are present in the same universe? Existential thoughts before slumber phenomenon. The existential thoughts before slumber phenomenon is a phenomenon that I hold quite closely to my heart because of how it has been prevalent for the majority of my life. As you could guess, the existential thoughts before slumber phenomenon is a phenomenon that occurs whenever I am in bed and am trying to go to sleep, but instead of falling asleep easily, my mind nicely plops down an existential thought for me to reflect on instead of sleeping. I can remember this happening to me in a very specific night when I was around 6 or 7, where I was trying to fall asleep, but I realized something that made me really sad. I realized that at some point in my life, it's very likely that I will end up going to my mom and dad's funeral and have to live in a world without my loving parents. I couldn't go to sleep as I had never thought about this possibility before, and it made me feel extremely sad. And even though I didn't notice it at the time, I was having a deeply existential experience. Nowadays, I've come to terms with this fact, and the existential thoughts I have are more about looking into the unknown future of my life. I realize that at some point, I'm gonna have to grow up, get my own house, get an adult job, leave the reliability of my family, and be an adult. And that's a sobering truth I usually ponder on. Those kind of thoughts nowadays usually don't come out of nowhere though, and are instead triggered by my brain either playing Toby Fox's Good Night, or just myself looking back on my life. These thoughts will likely continue to happen throughout the entirety of my life, and I've come to accept that, and hold those thoughts close to my heart, instead of far away. Restoration. Caution, this dream is in third person, so don't worry, none of the other dreams in this iceberg are gonna be, but yeah. Stuffy Cat wanted to say the day was normal. He sat in the playroom twiddling his thumbs, knowing that something would happen. Now, Stuffy Cat was no psychic, but he knew that the daycare day was not over, and there was a strange absence of daycare kids in his house. He knew that the sky doesn't usually emit a tint of yellow onto all of the air particles, washing them until the air in and around his house was that tint of yellow. Suddenly, Stuffy Cat's dad ran into the living room and faced directly towards Stuffy Cat. "Run," he demanded. His dad's eyes somehow looked cold and dead, as well as terrified. Stuffy Cat knew that this was no prank, something was wrong. Stuffy Cat went to the west window of the playroom and punched it. The window left a small, exactly circular hole where his fist went through the glass. Stuffy Cat ripped and tore the glass away like plastic until he could fit and jumped through the window, landing on the cold grass. Stuffy Cat frantically looked around for his sisters, but they had already jumped out a separate window and were waiting for him. Stuffy Cat told his sisters to run, and they complied easily, just like he had. Stuffy Cat ran down the street with his sisters. He turned around to look at the house again, expecting some sort of tactical airstrike or fire decimating the house. But when Stuffy Cat looked at his house, it wasn't what he expected. The house itself was completely fine, but the surroundings were strange. There were black vehicles in the street in front of his house, and people surrounding the house. Two mysterious, shady figures were standing beside the house. They looked as if they were staring at Stuffy Cat and his sisters. No. They were directly staring at Stuffy Cat. Their eyes wouldn't move off of him. Stuffy Cat ushered his sisters to run away from the house faster, before something happened. While Stuffy Cat was running away from the house, he couldn't stop to think about who the people were, why they were after Stuffy Cat and his family, and most importantly, why didn't the people come after Stuffy Cat and his sisters right after they saw him? Stuffy Cat kept running, wanting this whole scenario to be a dream. He wanted it all to stop. Minecraft Garfield. In this dream, I was John from Garfield, and inside a Minecraft world. I had just finished searching an eerie and empty mansion, so I ventured forth outside to the backyard of sorts. The backyard was filled with realistic grass contained by leafy hedge fences, and briefly littered with random wooden structures all about. I watched out for danger as a white kid mentally spoke to me, speaking monologues about things that I had remembered, but I don't know where from. At some point, he told me something that sounded very familiar, and I realized that there was danger behind me. The danger was a pair of small, blocky, cartoonish dogs connected by a 3-pixel high and 6-block wide lime green and yellow leash. The dogs' mouths cartoonishly took up the front half of their body. They chased me, so I ran away from them, only getting damaged a small amount. After a while of running, I decided to turn around and use a yellow sword in my hotbar to kill them both. They didn't drop anything. I then went to a corner in the yard, and another John and Liz with strange faces came up to me, hurting me as well. I killed both of them and noticed that they dropped a used face mask, a kind that hardens and peels off of a person's face for beauty. I saw it as a food item in the dream and used them to refill my health. The face masks, for some reason, didn't stack though, unlike most foods. It was then implied that I stayed there for a while, waiting for more zombified Johns and Liz's to come around my corner to grind for more face masks. After a transition, I was now Garfield and walked up to a door in the abandoned mansion. I reported to a person at the door in an oddly comedic sense that I had killed over 7 million Odies and about 18 Johns. The person acknowledged this and wrote down the information, but afterwards he acted like he didn't care that I was there. Using force, I knocked down the door, which caught the 4 people in the room who stood and worked together off guard. On the wall of the room there was a calendar of sorts, which explained what I had to do each day of the week. I ridiculed the workers for not keeping an eye on Odie, pointing out that even in the picture of what was supposed to be happening today, behind the very door I had just opened, there was Odie, slacking off. Also, in the picture I cited, for some reason, I held a pistol which looked similar to the Garf gun attack in Bad Monday Simulator. The workers recognized this and went on to talk about a pink bacteria-like fish creature that was used to help them, especially in rallying up a large squid, as seen in the picture for what was supposed to be happening day 2. Post-death games. I started the stream in between 2 different areas, one being a vaguely open grassy area, but enclosed enough to keep a large group of people in, and the other a large cement building with 3 parent-teacher-like interviews, and in the back an abundance of school cafeteria-like circular tables with chairs around. I was confused as to why I was there, so I went up to the interviewers to find answers. Strangely enough, the interviewers and the interviewees were all human-sized plushes. This might sound strange, but somehow it was like neither the plushes nor I was out of place, and somehow we fit together. As stated before, the plushes were human-sized, but were controlled by their own free will. I don't remember the first and third plushes, but the middle 2 I do remember, those being Jester as the interviewer and an old man plush, presumably a newspaper zombie, as the interviewee. For an unknown reason, the meeting between the newspaper zombie and Jester had ended before the other 2, Jester remarking in a sort of sadistic tone, "Well, it seems like we're done before anyone else." The newspaper zombie left, and I approached the Jester's station. At this point in time, I knew that I was at some sort of place where things go after they die, but the great abundance of plushes led me to be confused. As I approached Jester, I saw him in a sort of satanic figure for some reason, but not like an evil demonic kill devil, but instead more of a cartoony representation. I approached the Jester, who casually greeted me, and I sat down in the chair in front of him. The Jester pulled out a sort of binder out of nowhere, which was implied to have everything the person has ever said inside it. He flipped to my page in the book, but for some reason, the name before the dialogue was highlighted in orange, like Jester. After a transition, I still sat in the chair in front of Jester, but now I questioned him as to why I was there. I looked back out to the grassy area, and the once empty area was now filled with all of my classmates. I looked back at Jester, millions of questions running through my head, and asked him again why I was there. Knowing my class and where I was confused beyond belief, for sort of obvious reasons. I knew that this place was for people who died, or more specifically plushes, which brought up a question I didn't think of while in the dream. I was more concerned as to why all of my classmates had ended up in the same area after we all seemingly died. Knowing some minority of my classmates were troublemakers and not saved in Jesus, I was concerned why all of our class was in the same area, because we surely weren't in heaven, so that would mean... I then sat at one of the tables, where some of my friends were also at, but the friends I was with was not specific. I was extremely depressed and just sat at the table, staring into the distance in sadness. I was especially sad because it was implied that someone who I liked had left the room in an exit to the bottom of me. With all that weighing on me, I started to cry, for I had really nothing else to do. While crying, one of my nice friends came up to me and tried to comfort me, saying things like, "It's okay, Stuffy Cat, it's gonna be okay." This was kind of awkward for me, but at the same time, was quite comforting, almost like this friend was supposed to be the consoler and moral compass for our class in these trying times. Suddenly, I was in the middle of my middle school gym, and other people were in the gym with me, but they were so far away I could barely even notice them. We were playing a game now, throughout the school. The game consisted of an evil man trying to transport an inflatable dinosaur to a specific location in the school, and we had to all try and stop him. I walked out of the room nonchalantly, down the band hall to the cafeteria, but for some reason, the layout of the school was different, and I ended up instead walking to the pre-cafeteria place where one would receive their food. I turned the corner down the hallway that led to the cafeteria, and there was the evil man with the inflatable dinosaur. The evil man himself crawled on his belly, probably for stealth, and strangely enough looked like an older version of me, but wearing all black. I ran up to the man, took the inflatable dinosaur from him, and headed for the cafeteria, now taking on the role of the antagonist. As I entered the cafeteria, I was met with no opposition, the only ones in the cafeteria being a few teachers who talked around a table in the background. The place I needed to put the dinosaur at to win was a table with a bowl of salsa on it, but instead of placing the inflatable at the table, I decided to give the opposing team some time to stop me. I took the inflatable dinosaur and started to dance with it. To a dance I called the salsa, even though it was more like a waltz, with me dipping and spinning the dinosaur multiple times. As I danced, I started to see more people entering the room through the various entrances, who noticed me and the dinosaur. I continued to dance for a while, though, until I decided to stop by slowing my dancing and making my way to the salsa table. The table no longer had a bowl of salsa at it anymore. Now it had people working at it, with two metal bowls, one full of green jalapenos and the other full of ranch. I decided to place the dinosaur on the ground, go behind it, and lift it up onto my shoulders, as a father would do for his son. I noticed one of my best friends next to me, and childishly told him, trying to make him laugh, "I love kids." This worked, and my friend and I laughed at my bad joke. That's it. Well, here we are, the bottom of the iceberg. What you've listened to has culminated to this very moment. The absolute depths. Layer 5. Compared to all the other entries on this iceberg, Layer 5 makes them child's play. Layer 5 is truly in the depths. There is no escape. And what are you to do but ponder? What is this? Layer 5 contains entries that put all of the other disturbingness of every single other entry on this iceberg to shame. Layer 5 is 100% not for the faint of heart. If you would like to turn back now, I will direct you to the outro of this iceberg and you won't have to watch. Because I'm telling you, Layer 5 is something else. I haven't done this for any other layer, but since layer 5 goes through such topics, I feel like I should have the disclaimers like this. Layer 5 is the craziest of them all. This layer has entries discussing child endangerment, child abduction, self-harm, suicide, death, and Joe Biden. If any of those topics you don't feel comfortable hearing discussed in decent detail, there is no shame for ending the iceberg here. I'll put a timestamp to where the outro is. You don't have to trudge through this. Well, without further ado, let's get into the depths of layer 5. Raggedy Ann. This dream started with my mom, dad, and I watching something on Hulu, and an ad came on. This ad was spooky, so I wanted to look away from it or turn it off. I don't remember exactly who it was, but someone tried to turn off the ad because I was scared of it, but for whatever reason, they weren't able to turn it off. The volume was attempted to be turned down, but the more the ad played, the louder the TV would get. I was freaking out because at this age, I couldn't deal with scary stuff at all. The thing is, I was freaking out beyond control, more than a scared kid would react, and it was like I knew that as I ran into the playroom, hid behind a shelf, and curled up in a ball as I covered my ears, that it wouldn't matter what I did, and I wouldn't be able to escape whatever this was. The ad then transported me to see the trailer in full detail via a dream cutscene, but I can't remember too much of it. It was over some Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls with some creepypasta story to it. The trailer conveyed a dark tone, which made a good amount of sense because of the mainly shadowy night aesthetic that was used while explaining the story. The main parts I remember about this trailer, in no particular order, are as follows. I remember a scene with a girl in a school play yard on the cement surrounded by other girls, something happening with the girl and the boy by a river under a bridge, and lastly, something occurring with a special serum being used with the girl and boy to transport the girl into a Raggedy Ann doll and the boy into Raggedy Andy doll. I think that the main idea of the show, which this is entirely speculation, was possibly about a girl and boy who got bullied at school, tried to drown themselves in a river under a bridge, but were brought back to life using some ungodly serum that turned them into twisted Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls respectively to keep them alive. Oh yeah, I also remember the girl going to kill the entire town or something. Just saying, who would greenlight this show? I mean, I know it's Hulu, but come on. The Hand. This happened on a Sunday morning, at the time where I had my bed close to the wall of my old room. It was morning, and I was in my bed, being lazy and constantly watching my doorway. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary and continued watching because it was too light to sleep, and I wasn't supposed to wake up yet. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a human hand showed itself from the right side of the doorway, its palm showing itself to me in the hall. I knew that where there was a hand, there was a person, so I freaked out and hid under my covers, a few minutes later creating a wall-like fort to shield myself from the doorway. I don't know if the hand was just one of my parents pranking me, which isn't very likely, if it was somehow a dream, or if it was all just my imagination. A new little sister. In this dream, I found myself at the end of a walk-through aquarium and needed to get a fish out of the aquarium for some specific reason. I noticed an employee at the end of the hall and begged them to get the fish out of the aquarium. Thankfully, they agreed to my request. After a weird transition, the fish had turned into my little sister, but newer. Apparently, before this, My little sister either turned into that fish or died. In the end hallway of the aquarium, I prepared myself to present my little sister to my family, and as I prepared, I could hear cat lovers say, "So does little sister not have an insanity brain anymore?" I walked my little sister to my family and noticed that she was oddly not excited about being in the aquarium. As she got to my family, I could see that she was just as nice and empathetic as any little girl, but she didn't seem to recognize us. Well, the reason she couldn't recognize who we were was because she had lost all her memories. All of her memories with us as a family, growing up, playing games, everything, it was all gone. We might have gotten my little sister back, but we didn't really get her back. Lights out. The following dream is, in fact, a nightmare. Even though it might not seem scary while listening, try to remember the trappedness you would feel if this happened to you in a dream. In this dream, I found myself outside, in the front yard with a few other people who I do not know. I was lucid in this dream, and for some unknown reason, I had my little sister in my arms. I decided to start exploring, so I went to our neighbor's house, which was right next to ours. As I looked at the house, I was taken aback with fear. The normal one-story house had been turned into a skinnier house with 3 levels and a textbook spooky triangle roof. For some reason, this made me very afraid, and I looked behind myself just to see my other neighbor's house normal, but this just made me even more afraid. I rushed to our front yard, my little sister now absent from my arms, and the dream as a whole. I looked at the others in the yard in confusion and fear, but suddenly, all the lights went out. And when I say this, I mean all light became obsolete, meaning that even light sources like the sun seemed to disappear in a blink of the eye. We all ran away in fear, hoping that we could escape whatever had happened. I looked to my right and saw a large spotlight being pointed at me, causing me to scream out in fear. I quickly turned around, only to be met with the gold life form in the doorway to our back porch, looking at me. The horrifically large life form looked very similar to the mysterious life form seen in Yellow Pikmin's Lost Pikmin Season 2, but now the size of a human. The gold life form jump-scared me, which in turn caused me to wake up. Disturbing commercials. At the start of this dream, I watched some sort of Pixar or Illumination movie that took place in a nice suburb. The scene I watched took place where a person, seemingly a mother's son, scrapes his knee. After noticing this, the mother rushes out of her house to check on him while he is on the sidewalk in front of their house, waiting for her. The father and 2-year-old sister also rush out with the mother. When the mom, little sister, and dad rush out of the house, the camera reveals that the houses on the right and left of the mom's house are exactly the same. The little sister goes ahead of everyone, and the mother goes to check in on her son. For some reason, she begins to sing, and in response, the camera shows the father singing in the background to the same song as the mother, and the son even starts singing as well. As the camera stays on the mother and injured son, the camera pans to the little sister, eyes only black dots as pupils, and singing exactly along to the song with the mother, staring into the camera. The camera pans completely out and the viewer can see the other houses as well, where there are neighbors exiting their houses singing exactly along with the mother. The neighbor's strange behavior makes the mother confused and a bit scared. The next thing I watched was a sort of trailer for Minions 2, only called Minions 2. The scene taking place had a bunch of the knowable minions in a baby-like form, very small and climbing up an icy mountain glacier. One of the minions was so small they used a sort of green solid slinky to go up the steps. One of the minions is so small they have to use a sort of green solid slinky to go up the steps. Once they reach a cave area in the glacier mountain, a scary version of Sid the Sloth appears. This Sid didn't look like it was meant to be scary, but its larger look, razor-sharp teeth, and general presence made it seem like he was some sort of primal and horrific version of Sid. The minions run into the cave away from him. Another scene I vaguely remember had Kevin, or the tall minion, extending his neck further and further up. This reminded me of the lesser dog from Undertale. That's it. And that all just leaves me with one question. Who let them cook? Joe Biden encounter. In this dream, I was walking around with an unknown person in a very big and grassy area where a party was taking place. While I walked with this unknown person, we ended up walking past Joe Biden, suit and all, who sat in the grass. As we passed by, I thought about saying something along the lines of, "Why is the president of all people at this specific party?" Or, "Oh wow, I can't believe the president of all people came here." I decided to tone down my statement so it was less obvious I was talking about Biden. As soon as we walked by, Biden began talking to us, so in response we turned to his attention. When he talked to us, trying to explain why he was at the party, it appeared as though he was speaking complete gibberish. It wasn't even the kind of gibberish where one would put random words into a sentence. No, he just completely made up total words in a sentence of his own, trying to communicate to us as he sat in the grass. Missing deformed face. I remember that in this dream, one thing stood out among all others, which presented itself at the very beginning of the dream. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. While I was inspecting myself, this is when I noticed that a chunk of my face was missing, which made it seem deformed and extremely out of place. The part that was missing was the bottom left part of my mouth. An entire chunk of teeth and gums had been taken out from where it should have been. The only thing left was a scrunched up placement of skin where my teeth and gums should have been. I remember looking in the mirror and seeing my face in horror, wondering what happened to it. My entire face looked like a malformed attempt at a human facial structure in comparison to its regular self. I spent the rest of the dream freaking out as I ran about the house, trying to find help to fix what happened to me. Also, I'm not trying to make fun of or trying to belittle people with facial deformities. Just imagine a normal person waking up to a world where they don't have a part of their face anymore. Trust me, we do not want another Julian Wonder scenario here. Lastly, for a bit more of context, this dream was so impactful that whenever I remembered it in the waking world, I quickly reached up to the lower left part of my mouth on impulse to check if I was okay. Abandoned water park showcase. This dream has stuck with me for most of my life because of how off and horrifying the abandoned attractions were. In this dream, I was part of a viewing group at an abandoned water park showcase. This showcase took place thousands of miles in the air because of how huge the rides were, so we walked around on a large metal bridge to fully see each ride. Where we were wasn't all that dark out, but it was incredibly foggy all around. The first ride I remember seeing, the one that stuck with me as the representation of the dream, was one of those rides where passengers sat in individual seats and went in circles around a pole while going upwards in height, but this time thousands of feet in the air. The seats themselves were so high up that it seemed like they were higher than the mountains behind them, and the end height was even higher. The entire ride was fully metal and rusty all around as well. Again, I cannot stress how enormous the size of this ride was, and it wasn't like it was for giants or anything, it was just extremely high up. The only other ride I remember seeing was a set of swings, but the height was also extremely high, and the ride was massively tall, as were its chains. No wonder the park was abandoned. Existential phenomenon. The existential phenomenon is a phenomenon that presents how existential some of my dreams can be. To this point, the only existential dreams I've had surround the thoughts of death, eventual death, and what happens after death, even though I know what happens after death. My mind seems to not be able to wrap itself around the concept of death, and therefore dreams about death have great existential dread and feelings of existentialism during and afterwards. In most of these dreams, there's either this feeling of depressing, unmovable fate or a sense of dreadful hopelessness. The dreams that have this phenomenon so far are post-death games and end times. Now, you guys have actually learned about post-death games, as it was the last entry of Layer 4. And wouldn't you say a dream where my classmates and I get transported to a place where things go after they die and are forced to play extremely random games that make no sense for no reason except just to pass time, as we will never escape these games, for there's nothing else for us to do, is a pretty existential concept in itself? Sorry. Sorry, I got a little carried away there. Backrooms phenomenon. The backrooms phenomenon is quite interesting and holds a special place in my heart. This is because the phenomenon is best described by me going through or deciding to enter a place reminiscent of the backrooms. If you don't already know, I really like the idea of the backrooms, but since they don't exist, to our knowledge, and I can't explore them in the real world, I get led to putting them as prime requests for what I want to do in my dreams. The prime requests of my dreams, as of now, are as follows. Going to the backrooms, preferably level 0, but any large empty liminal space will do. Going to a mall. Encountering the Hat Man. I don't know, he kinda just seems like a kooky dude. And encountering Agent Smith from The Matrix. Most of these requests have actually been fulfilled to some extent in my dreams, as looking back, there's actually some evidence for that in previous entries. But one of the main requests that have not been fulfilled is truly traveling to the backrooms. And also going to a mall, I guess. Usually when I have backrooms dreams, they consist of me in a backroom-like area, but for some reason, most of the time I end up being with someone else, making the backrooms feel less lonely. One of the experiences I've had that would most connect to the backrooms would be the base room's Gert dream, where I genuinely feel like I'm exploring a liminal environment. Looking back on it, the base room's backrooms concept created by myself might actually end up being my mind's go-to for backrooms dreams, which is actually pretty cool. One time in my dreams I had come across an entrance to the backrooms, more specifically in a lucid dream. When I looked into the entrance, my veins started pumping with fear for some reason, like it would be a horrible idea to venture forth. The entrance to the backrooms resembled level 0, but was dimly lit and only got darker from the entrance. I remember audibly saying in the dream, "Nope," and decided to find something else to do. I guess my mind can't get past the thought that, theoretically, once you enter the backrooms, there is no true exit. Little sister in danger phenomenon. This phenomenon is quite simple, but also very disturbing to experience. This phenomenon is stating the sheer amount of dreams I've had where my little sister is in danger. As of now, those instances would be unsuccessful captor, untrustworthy guardian, and a new little sister. Some people say that I have these dreams not because my little sister is always in danger, but because she is the most vulnerable of my family. In all of the dreams she is in, she is around 6, so she's the youngest of our family, and therefore my mind must think of her as someone who is the most vulnerable to danger. Heck, I could imagine all of the dream circumstances where she's in danger and replace them with a different member of my family, and they would likely be fine. Another theory is that these dreams take place because simply I'm her big brother, and therefore I feel responsible for her most of the time. I don't know. But as you could imagine, seeing a loved member of your family constantly in danger in your dreams can take a toll. Untrustworthy guardianship. In this dream, I was with my little sister and cat lover as we were under the guardianship of a random man, implied to be watching us because of our mom and dad's requests. We stood in the grassy area between the fast food restaurants and the road of Uptown Dreamtown, near the exit of the city. Specifically, we were at the place near Dairy Queen, and it was pitch black night out. The man explained to us something that he had created, that thing being a card that he liked to call a deb card because it was linked to a bank account with infinite money. The man then just left us on our own, gone without a trace. The card was given to my little sister, and she started walking towards the McDonald's nearby, so I followed her, close behind, and Cat Lover was implied to be following close behind me. As we got closer to the McDonald's, I noticed that there were people eating outside of it, making lots of noise. I soon realized that the people eating outside the McDonald's were my little sister's and Cat Lover's daycare friends. Thinking that my little sis would be drawn to her friends at the McDonald's, I told her, "Little sister, I think we should go home." For some reason, though, I didn't sound as loud as I should have when I spoke to her, but I didn't think much of it. Suddenly, my little sister took a hard left and started walking into the dark street, attempting to walk to the other side. For obvious reasons, it brought me great fear and anxiety to watch my 6-year-old sister attempt to walk across the street at night in dark clothing, paying no attention to traffic, all by herself. Yet, for some reason, I didn't follow after her. Right as she was about to make it halfway, for obvious reasons, it brought me great fear and anxiety to watch my 6-year-old sister attempt to walk across the street at night in dark clothing, paying no attention to traffic, all by herself. Yet, for some reason, I didn't follow after her. Right as she was about to make it halfway, I saw a car speeding towards her. I tried to scream and shout to her, "Get out of the way!" or "Come back!" But my screams were drowned out by an unknown force, causing my screams and shouts to be turned into a calm and soft voice, not nearly loud enough for my little sister to hear. At the last second, she noticed the car coming towards her, but it was too late. She tried jumping over the car, but she simply was not big enough. She jumped into the car and was propelled back a good distance on the road, still in front of the car. At that very moment, her positioning on the road would have allowed her to be driven right over, no parts of the car being able to touch her. But after a little bit, she squirmed around a bit on the road, likely in pain, which caused her to fatally be ran straight through by the car's right tires. And eventually, the car's right tires ran through the middle of the girl who laid on the ground. And all I could do was watch as she was killed right before me. The car continued like nothing ever happened, probably not even noticing what it had done. I still remember seeing my little sister's body lying on the ground around her now darker than before. I then woke up. Man, I just wanted to explore a cool abandoned mall or something. Not this. Not this. Unsuccessful captor. In this dream, I found myself sitting on the bench swing in my backyard during the daytime. I was focused on our neighbor's house, although it was implied that only my little sister and I were outside, and I was the only one watching her. For no apparent reason, I suddenly jolted over to look at the street in fear. In the street, there sat an eerie brown and beige van, which vaguely resembled Scott Lang's van, but that detail surely didn't take any fear away. In anxiety and fear, I asked myself, what was the van doing there? Why was it here? Where is my little sister? I quickly got off the bench swing in fear and ran into the back porch, where I thankfully met my little sister. Still anxious and on edge though, I quickly and fearfully ushered my little sister inside, which made her a bit frustrated because she wanted to keep playing outside. We rushed inside our dark house and I locked the door with haste as soon as the both of us were inside. I frantically rushed upstairs and woke up my mother and father, telling them about the frightening experience. And then I woke up, but it wasn't like how I would normally wake up. You know how some dreams have such high emotions in them that you carry them over after you wake up, like waking up from a nightmare screaming or waking up from a sad dream crying? Well, I woke up in my pull-out bed in the middle of the hotel living room in Texas where we were staying for vacation and decided to do something that I hadn't done in a while. I woke up my mother in the middle of the night and asked her to come to my bed and pray over me. This dream shook me so much that I ended up doing something that I had only done when I was a child, after waking up from a scary dream. That's how bad it felt. Interconnected Dream Universe Theory. As of recent, mainly because of the success of Marvel's widely successful Marvel Cinematic Universe, many have started to bandwagon off of this idea, making their own cinematic universes, either off of inspiration from Marvel or trying to make a quick buck. And you know what? It makes sense. The idea of an expansive series of media and content that somehow fits into a wider interconnected universe in order to tell a bigger story is actually pretty cool. Now, with that in mind, what if the concept of an interconnected universe was brought into mind a series of dreams, or possibly all dreams a person has had? Well, that's exactly what I tried to do myself, and it was pretty interesting to say the least. Now, with all the different themes occurring in my dreams, it might seem difficult to tie them all together in one expanding universe. And to counter this, I thought of an idea to tie all of my dreams together into one interconnected universe. I decided to connect all of my dreams together into one story with the use of one thing: the How I Met Phil Coulson. This dream started with my family and me crawling around in a boxy tunnel coated with light beige carpet. We eventually came across a box at the end of a dead-end corridor, and they asked me if I should get it and open it up. In a disappointed response, I told them that they should already know the answer to this question, and that, of course, we should. I then went to go get the box and brought it back to the group. Inside the box were a Wither plush, a Warden plush, and the shell of a Dryac Bowser Jr. plush, among other things. My family still didn't know what we should do with it, which made me even more disappointed and frustrated because I knew that according to the rules of the game, they should have been running away because the plushes were the enemies of the game. Suddenly, I found myself in a random house hotel-like area with sprawling rooms. Some of the rooms were darker than the others, and there was an elevator in the corner of the level. I was in this area with many other people who I knew, and we were supposedly playing a game together. The game itself was an exploration-type game, where in certain areas we were supposed to only crawl on the ground, and in others we could walk on our feet. I looked around the level and noticed that some people had made it to a big dark room and came across a box. However, once they opened the box, they all reactively scurried away. I, along with the other players I was with, understood what was happening, and also decided to run away from the dark room on the right. I ran to the elevator, but unfortunately tripped once I got inside. After recovering from the fall, I noticed a church acquaintance of mine at the elevator entrance who reprimanded me for cheating. The doors to the elevator then closed, leaving me inside. Now stuck in the moving elevator, I stood up and waited for the elevator to drop me off on a different floor, but that never happened. I soon noticed a little device on the wall of the elevator above where the buttons were, which displayed something about a large group of white businessmen. Out of nowhere, a cartoonish slash went across my body, which was similar to the Undertale knife slash, painlessly chopping off one of my body parts. This body part is interesting because it was actually well, this is why we have the disclaimers. All of my main reproductive organs. But instead of being actually gone, it was implied that it was all covered up by a pink goo. Sorry for the gross fest. Ugh. Eventually, the elevator doors opened back up, so I ran into the next area. The next area was a dimly lit enclosed park. It was again implied that we were playing a game, this time a game of tag, boys versus girls, in which you needed to tag the opposite team's members in the area where a You don't want to be tagged. Weird game idea, I know. In fact, that leads me to wonder, what the heck was my subconscious cooking? Anyways, I looked around for some enemy agents and noticed two figures, illuminated by a pink outline, inside the playground structure. They both jumped down and someone, a person in my grade known for being a very feminine male, tried to tag me, but I was too good at dodging and instead tagged him. Oh, and also, even though there were specific places where you were supposed to tag people in the game of tag, nobody actually abided by the rules of the game. So, hopefully that makes you feel a little bit better about this. It was then implied that the game was over, so as a sort of end-of-game advertisement, I got transported to a dream cutscene in which hybrid McDonald's foods exploded. For example, there was this McChicken inside of a Big Mac that kinda just exploded for no reason. Looking back on this cutscene was pretty similar to the Arby's "Our food keeps blowing up" commercial. After the cutscene ended though, out of nowhere, I pinned the first person I tagged, the person who I described before, down and started yelling at him. I said things like, "Do you know what they did to me?" And it seemed like I was genuinely in distress. Thankfully enough for him, his friends noticed this and came over to stop me from my lashing out. Then, like nothing ever happened, I traveled over to a dark, grassy area before the playground, and casually tried to find the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s cast. I found them in the dark grass of the fake playground, all holding hands together in a circle and spinning around. I got inside the circle and noticed that all of the characters were strange side characters that looked different than their actual actor. The only member who looked authentic was Clark Gregg, or Agent Coulson. He acted like I shouldn't have been there, but I explained what happened in the elevator in a very cheery and happy mood, which caused him to decide that I should be there. Coulson and I then traveled over to some sort of Disney character meeting area, where I shook Coulson's hand and introduced myself, tears welling up in my eyes. He introduced himself as Phil Coulson, an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and told me some sort of quote from Peggy Carter as he gave me a couple of quarters. Trying to act like Coulson, I put the coins in my pocket saying, "I'll keep these for later," and then explained that Coulson would have done a magic trick with the coins once given to him, and would then after show me how he did the magic trick. We then begun walking away as I fangirly told him, "Well, it's not as cool as a flying car." Don't jump. I started this dream out in a Walmart, hanging out with a black friend exclusive to the dream, with my dad following behind. This black friend swore a lot and reminded me of a typical high schooler, who had many friends who were vaguely the same. The dude decided to walk down another aisle in Walmart, while I split off from his path and headed to the video game section. Once I finally got to the video game section, I entered the semicircle-like walkway of the video games and looked through the technology. I noticed some strange-looking Nintendo Switches and other video game stuff, but that was about it. While I inspected the video games, I could begin to hear a person from my high school nicknamed The Beast walking by, who told me, "Video games, huh, Stuffy Cat?" I simply replied by saying, "Yeah," as I continued to inspect the Nintendo Switches. I made my way down to a different video game aisle when I noticed a bucket full of plushes, with a big picture-like label on the front of it, with a high-quality picture of the plush like from somewhere like Amazon. When I went to inspect the plushes further, they ended up being the lowest quality you could imagine. The specific plush being advertised on the box was a yellow Yoshi plush, but the actual plush itself had the quality of some plush from Dollar Tree, but yellow. I was automatically disappointed by the plush and audibly stated that in the dream. At some point, I acquired a cowboy zombie plush, but soon after, my dad told me that we should go to the swamp tennis court. I agreed, teleporting us to the entrance of the tennis court swamp. After we entered the tennis swamp-like area, my dad picked his tennis racket, and I was left to choose my own. On the grass were about 5 tennis rackets, but one that specifically caught my eye was the green one. According to the dream, My family had purchased the tennis racket for me during my middle school years because of my 7th grade PE teacher's rules, and also apparently because I was super invested in tennis because of one of my friend's devotion to the sport. I noticed that I still had the cowboy zombie in my possession. I thought about putting it back, but ended up putting it on the ground, picking up my racket, and going to the swamp tennis court. The tennis court was covered in swampy grass, and the only thing resembling a tennis court in the foliage was the net in the middle of 2 distinct sides of the grass. There were some of my classmates on both sides of the court, and my dad was on the side away from me. I don't exactly remember the classmates that were there, but I knew that they were my classmates. My side of the tennis court had very long grass, and even a fairly large pond of water near the middle of the court, near the net. On the other side of the court, everything seemed much cleaner, except for the fact that it wasn't the court they were standing on, it was grass. I guess you could say the grass is much greener on the other side. Okay, you can cut that out. I noticed a fly in the midst of the tall grass and swung at it with my racket, thinking that it was a birdie, but the fly got away as I swung. I could barely see my dad on the other side of the court, but I could hear chatter from the other side of the court about a kid who got stuck in a tree. I looked to my right and saw a classmate of mine, a classmate who was quite well known for a threat he made to the school, who sat in a high-up tree. I didn't think much of it and waited for my dad to serve. As I waited, the conversation on the other side of the court changed tone, the classmates acknowledging that the guy was just snapping his fingers, saying, "He's just snapping." I looked back to the tree and my classmate was standing now, and stated ominously in his sarcastic-like voice, 100 seconds to 0. Just like that. Everyone stopped playing tennis and fearfully gave their attention to my classmate and a second's notice of his words. Everyone's faces on the court quickly changed from happy and careless to fearful and anxious. This guy was gonna jump, dying in the process, either due to the water beneath the tree or to the fall damage that would ensue from falling from a high height. And not only that, he was betting on it. Suddenly, I was in the tree with his classmate, higher than him in the tree, and I realized he was climbing up in my direction. My original classmate was not himself anymore, because now, the person who was climbing up the tree to further the damage that he would receive upon hitting the ground was a character named Walter White from the hit series Breaking Bad. He continued climbing up the tree until he saw me, noticing my anxious and scared look. Because of the height of the tree and the unstable person climbing up it, I was not feeling too great about the scenario, and that seemed to change his mind. He said something to me like, "Nah, it's alright, buddy," reassuring me as he started to climb back down the tree. Happy that he wouldn't be doing such a dangerous thing anymore, I said in response, "I couldn't live without you, Walter." Mr. White continued climbing down the tree to be met by the people who were worried about him at the other side of the court. They all explained how happy they were to see that he was okay in a pretty wholesome way. The first person who approached him was a middle-aged white man with brown hair, presumably Jesse from the same show. He responded with, "Good on you," as Walter pulled out a gun, killing all who was with him on the ground in an instant. The last bit of the dream I remember was a sort of news broadcast, containing Walter White who faced the camera almost as if he had taken the broadcast hostage. All he did was explain that he had to do what he did since Matt Pett had theorized about it. Here we go. The final entry. The bottom of the iceberg. Let's do this. N times. The dream started with me lying in a dark playground, with my dad on my left. It was perceived that I was on my deathbed, but in the playroom for some reason. I was dying and I turned over to tell my dad, I love you guys so much. Now, my dad is a very serious and funny man, and he barely ever cries, but you know what? After I said that, he teared up. I mean, in retrospect, duh. His son was dying. I mean, come on, cut bro some slack. After I told him that, I leaned over to him again and said, I don't know what I'm gonna do with a YouTube channel. Generally not sure of what to do with my channel. I reminisced about my channel, saying things like, too bad I was never able to finish Battle for the Victory Plush Island, and the sorts. But it all seemed wrong. It seemed less like a nice remembrance and look back, and more like a meaningless distraction. Suddenly, I was in the armchair in a dimly lit living room, our living room, and it seemed to be night. I remembered all the things I needed to do, and it was so important that even the news was covering what was needed to be done. What I needed to do was get my life in order and read a specific verse from the Bible, or I would die and be sent to hell. Now, in case you were wondering, that's not how you go to heaven, by reading a specific verse out of the Bible. On the news, there had been reports of large groups of people, one of which being KSI, who prayed to him. In the dream, I knew that him was the devil, but it has been brought to my attention that it also sounded a lot like the Antichrist. In the dream, I had the sense of existential dread, like I had wasted so much of my life and now I would suffer the consequences. I thought that my family and I should sing songs of worship until the morning, but when I brought up my idea, most of my family, except for my mom, were already down in the basement. My mom looked at me in confusion and simply said, "But Wednesday is always workout night," as she walked into the basement as well. I continued to feel absolutely hopeless and alone, and felt that all of this was the end of the world, and that I couldn't do anything about it. Once I woke up, I experienced the most amount of relief I ever had, or honestly ever will have, upon exiting a dream. I surely thought I was gone for, and I was thankful that it was all just a dream. When going to record it, because of how I remembered it and how it still makes me feel, I originally named the dream Existential Dread, but renamed it to End Times. Now, the reason why the dream is still called End Times, in spite of its lies on how to be saved, is that, well, it could be representing the end times. Maybe the reason why I was so afraid of being sent to hell for not reading a specific verse of the Bible was that I had begun to believe what the world wanted me to believe, hence why it was a big deal on the news. Maybe, after everything, I had still fallen into the hands of evil. Now, you may be wondering why this is at the bottom of the iceberg, and that's for a pretty good reason too. I'm a very Christian boy, or at least I try to be, and the idea of falling to the temptations and quote-unquote truths of this world is a very existential idea for me. The entire dream on the surface is pretty dark and existential, but with me on my deathbed and fearing for my soul at the end of times, but the deeper meaning that could be interpreted from this dream is extremely insightful as well. The deathbed scenes of me thinking about the channel could be interpreted as me being overly obsessed with the channel, so much that even on my deathbed, I can't stop thinking about it. The end time scenes, though, those are a whole entire other can of worms that I could probably even make an entire video about. But overall, this dream was the most existential dream I've ever experienced in my life. And that's why it's at the bottom of the iceberg. I know some of you may be disappointed because You would have thought that the end of the iceberg would have been extremely scary or disturbing. Like, I don't know, be me being tortured or in some sort of horrific scenario. But for me, that's the most horrific scenario I can think of being in. Okay, well, that's the iceberg. Dang, we're really leaving off on that note, aren't we? Well, nothing else I can... Wait. How did I forget about this? Oh my gosh. There's another entry. A final entry. The final entry. What could this possibly be? Love. This dream started with me playing Super Mario Maker 2 on the big TV in our living room, sitting on the couch across from the TV. At some point, my dad told me that I needed to shut off the game, along with my little sister saying something in the background about how I didn't pronounce peep peep correctly, but I did not listen to any of it. By the time it was my dad's final warning for me to turn off the game, he told me, "Come on, Stuffy Cat, we love you, but you gotta turn off the game." For some reason, this mentally broke me. I sarcastically replied with malice in my voice, No, you don't." Those words cut through the air like a knife, and I could feel my hurtful words ringing in the air. I then got up from the couch, threw my controller over to another place on the couch, grabbed my blankets, and went upstairs to my room. Once I got in my room, I don't remember much. I remember trying to make the most of banishing myself to my room, so I played with plushes, rearranged, etc. But it all felt lonely. Too lonely. Painfully and depressingly lonely. Thinking that I had nothing else I could do, I fell to my bed and went to sleep. Soon, though, I woke up, still on my bed, and it was implied that I had slept for a really, really long time. I got up, groggy, and saw my phone at the foot of the bed, as well as a phone I had in the past sitting right next to it. Then, even though only one of them was able to receive calls, both of them showed that people were calling me. Oddly enough, the same person who called me on the first phone was also calling me simultaneously on the second. The person who called me was a girl, as implied by her name, so I was a bit intrigued as to why she was calling me. I answered on my actual phone while the same person continued to call me on the second, and I noticed that her name was Heidi. Once I picked up the phone, though, silence met me from the other end. All I could hear was someone in the background, my aunt, talking to someone, saying something to the effect of, "Hey, he actually picked up the phone!" Soon after, I heard my mom walking up the stairs to my room. My mom slowly entered my room and started talking to me like she usually would if I were in the circumstance, and I didn't really pay any attention. I did, however, notice that my little sister was with her. My little sister hopped up on my bed and started to talk to me too. Once again, I didn't really pay any attention. I continued not to pay any attention until my little sister told me something that caught my ear. The thing she told me that broke my heart was, "And you still don't know how to say peep peep." This absolutely emotionally broke me. I started uncontrollably crying as I held my little sister in my arms on the bed. I continued to cry so much because I couldn't believe that after everything, there was still somebody who would love me no matter what I did. Tears in my eyes, I apologized to my mom for everything I had done, and for some reason, directly afterward, my little sister and mom disappeared. I got up from my bed and started to make my way downstairs, and noticed that the house was a lot more crowded than before. While I walked down the stairs, I noticed someone walking down the stairs with me, that person being my youth pastor who looks like Jesus. While we slowly walked down the stairs, he noticed a bump I had on my head and empathetically asked me how long it had been from when I got it. I answered, saying that it had been 31 days. He then told me something to the effect of, "If you ever need anything, I'll be there for you." After I finished walking down the stairs to my living room, I saw a row of moms sitting on the couch vertically to the TV, and it was implied that one of their kids had been pushed to the ground by another. I looked to the ground beside the couch and saw a little white boy daycare kid, giggling and laughing on the ground. Suddenly, I was either 20 years old or in the perspective of another person. I was with a white girl who was implied to be my friend, who was also the same age as me. We were in some sort of cement basement right below a sort of beach. We were on an island, the island that Riggidy lived on, and a separate plotline of the dream was being resolved right in front of us. Through some flashback context, we figured out that Riggidy was a TikTok dancer, and her dad was usually pushed to the side because of her career. My friend looked out a window that presented a bottom-up view of the sandy shore of the beach, where we could hear the dad and his daughter talking. The dad, in a sort of remorseful but thankful tone, told his daughter, "Come on now, let us dance. Together." Together, they started dancing in a mix of waltz and salsa on the yellow sand, their orange-yellow clothing dancing across the shore with them. I looked at my friend and told her in response, "Well, can't leave him hanging." She took my outreached hand and we started dancing just like them. To this point, I've never felt a more satisfying and happy ending to one of those dreams. The ending of this dream gave me more emotional resolve than even that of Avengers Endgame or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 7. By far the best dream I've ever had, and it's not even close. This was amazing. Thanks for the awesome dream, Jesus. Oh, yeah. Almost forgot. The context that I have for this dream is that the night before I had this dream was the same night when my mom and dad went shopping for 6 hours for Christmas. And before I went to bed, for whatever reason, I asked God if I could have a cool dream. And a cool dream did I have. Thank you, God, for that amazing dream. I couldn't think of a better gift. Whew! Well, looks like that is the end of my personal dreams iceberg. Well, I hope you all enjoyed this rather lengthy video, and maybe you even thought it was worth it. I put a lot of work into this video, and like I said before, I like dreams, so of course, it's all worth it. This was originally planned on being a Thanksgiving special, but since I wanted the video to be as best as it could be, it ended up coming out a little bit later. Just don't check the date on when this was published. But anyways, that is the end of the personal dreams iceberg. Just as some closing thoughts, I guess. The final entry of the iceberg, love. I am 100% convinced that God gave me that dream. And no, I am not either psychotic, delusional, or a complete weirdo who has his thoughts all messed up in a bun. I'm actually, if you guys want to know another very much reason, other than the fact that that dream literally felt like the end of a great movie to me that felt amazing, then I could even probably post another one of my dreams, a separate dream, one of the worst dreams I've ever had, that proves that that dream was given to me by God. Anyways, I am very thankful if you watched all the way to this point in the iceberg. It was a crazy time making this iceberg. I've pushed this project back for so long, ever since May of this year. Oh my gosh. But I finally got it done, and you know what? It was worth it, wasn't it? I've always loved these personal dream iceberg things. I've really wanted to find more. I'm constantly searching on YouTube personal dream icebergs. Unfortunately, I just get the you know, the Minecraft dream. Like, come on, yeah. I mean, the general dreaming stuff that goes over REM movement and stuff like that, that's cool, and that's cool too, and it's cool to learn. But oh my gosh, Midnight Krick, I would just like to say, if you're watching this video, first off, that is I am honestly honored, especially if you got to this part in the video. I mean, this is a hefty video. But I'm very honored. You are the person who inspired me to make this in the first place, because I really never thought that making an iceberg of a dream of a series of dreams would work, and you know what? It worked for you. So I was just like, wow, if you can do it, why can't I do it? I'll give a swing at it. How about that? And you know what? Give a swing at it, did I? I don't know why I'm talking like this and weird. Did I? Anyways, this is probably gonna be cut out. I don't know. Outro the video. Woo! Huge project here. The editing took so long. The entries of themselves, unedited, they're like usually an hour a piece. Not trying to flex or anything, but like, this took a lot of time to work on. So, if you like dream stuff like this, or just my way of content, I guess, or my voice, or anything about my channel, maybe subscribe. I mean, I'm not saying that you should, or if you shouldn't. It's really your choice. Overall, this was a plunge into the waters. Layer 1 being a little tame. Layer 2 getting a little bit more ravenous. Layer 3 actually getting into the pretty deep stuff, or at least having the feet in the water. Layer 4 truly being submerged. And then layer 5 at the point of no return. And also, that's also why I put the final entry of the iceberg, because I thought, why would I leave you all on a super depressing, super disturbing, existential dream like that, and just be like, alright guys, remember to like and subscribe for more content, and see you next time. No, I was just kind of like, that feels mean. I'm gonna try to be a little bit nice. So that's why I put love at the end. One of my favorite dreams, by far. Anyways, this outro has probably taken a bunch of time, and we don't want to, impact the runtime of this video even more. As for all of this being said, I hope you enjoyed. I guess just one last thing, okay. I don't even know who's gonna be listening to this, but for who is, seem to be pretty committed. Thank you so much for listening and being so committed. Anyways, if you want to know any more dream stuff from me, of my personal dreams, I actually, in the making of this iceberg, I made a completely separate layer of this iceberg that is not out yet, and is not going to be included with the iceberg. called Layer Zero. And not trying to sway you off from wanting to listen to Layer Zero, it was basically all of the dreams that I thought didn't really fit in, because I thought they were kind of, TBH, I kind of thought they were boring. Boring! But you guys might think they're cool. So if you want to see Layer Zero, just talk to me. I don't know. Yeah. And dream content coming up. No idea, but I'm telling you, if you guys want some, I'll give you some more dream content. Whether that's in like more regular weekly uploads of just me talking about dreams. The Deltarune Dreams thing did not go well, so I'm pretty sure, I hope that if this Iceberg does well, then I'll know what to do with dream material. I could probably even make a second Iceberg. I mean, heck, if you guys want to see it, why not? After all, this is all for you guys. And also, really for me, because I really like dreams, and yeah. Alright, well, I think that's about it. So, with all that being said, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and sweet dreams.